Chapter 391. Hi. Dake found Mary in the contestant tunnel and took the initiative to greet her. Of the 4 juniors who advanced to the second round, Mary was the only one who could say a few words. Mary Bond raised her head, straightened her hair, and said, "We're lucky. We've all advanced." Dake walked over with a smile. "We were lucky." Mary turned to the stage. "Let's go. I hope we don't meet again. I don't think I'm your match now." Dake said, "Senior is still the best." "You little brat." Mary couldn't help but smile. "No wonder even classmate Doragon can get along well with you. You have a sweet mouth." Dake looked at this senior who was only a year older than him, but who acted like she was experienced. He smiled helplessly. When all 8 advanced contestants arrived, they walked to the stage together. On the stage, a senior from the Noble Academy was playing the violin. Remember the URL? M. VIP can't you? VIP. When they arrived backstage, Judy raised her hand and gestured for them to be quiet. The senior played the violin so well that the audience was unknowingly mesmerized. A few minutes later, he finished playing, and Judy walked onto the stage with a microphone. "Let's welcome the 8 advanced contestants." Then Dake and the others went on stage one after another. This time, they didn't need to be interviewed. Judy just had the staff bring 2 more long tables. There were 4 colored eggs on each table. The 8 contestants had to open the eggs at the same time and take out new number plates. Then, the rest of the competition would be decided based on the number plates. Originally, the competition schedule could be set behind the scenes, but doing so would make the audience feel more involved. "The juniors are over here. The seniors are over there." Judy separated the 8 contestants in order. Dake stood at the head of the long table on the left. On his right were Mary Bond, Stuart Fone, and Tom Nixon. When all 8 contestants were in position, Judy smiled and said, "Don't forget to pick up the hammers. When I count to 3, you can hit them together." "I'm a block of wood." Dake picked up the hammer and suddenly felt like he was playing a game with kindergarten kids. He shook his head to get rid of that absurd feeling. As Judy's countdown ended, he knocked hard on the door. "Pa!" X88 colored eggs were cracked at the same time. The audience held their breaths as if it had happened to them. Bang, bang, bang. The 8 colored eggs shot out brilliant fireworks at the same time, forming 4 different red and blue numbers in the air, which didn't disperse for a long time. "Didn't we agree on a number plate?" The contestants complained in their hearts, but they still subconsciously raised their heads and memorized the numbers. Number 2. Dake looked at the glowing red number 2 above his head and turned to look at the number of the contestant beside him. Mary Bond's number is 4. Stuart Fawn's number was 1. Tom Nixon's number was 3. According to the schedule, number 1 vs number 2, and number 3 vs number 4. Then, the winners of the 2 groups would compete in the finals. "So, my opponent for the next round is him?" Looking for the number 1, Dake couldn't help but look at Stuart Fawn, who was 1 seat away from him. This third-year Aristocrat Academy senior had feminine facial features. His hair was parted in the middle, and his brown hair fell over his shoulders. His eyes were deep black, and his skin was fair but slightly rough. When he turned his head to look, Stuart Fawn also happened to turn his head to look at him. The moment their gazes met, the corners of Stuart Fawn's mouth couldn't help but curl up slightly, revealing a slightly cruel smile. Then, he opened his mouth and said silently, "Caught you." The circular belt. The president of the Aristocrat History Research Society, Angus Jeffrey, revealed a similar smile at almost the same time. He cupped his hands and supported his chin. With a gloomy expression, he said in a low voice, "Owen, who do you think will win between the 2 of them?" Mike Owen was really helpless. He had consciously sat in the back corner, but he didn't expect Jeffrey to call him over for some reason. After this call, Jeffrey didn't say anything and just left him hanging, which made him feel even more awkward. He didn't expect Jeffrey to suddenly ask such a question at this time. He could only analyze and say, "Dake Diming's deck is very strong, and the intelligence of the magic elf is very high. This is his unique point. However, his fighting style is very direct, and he will be lacking in the chain. If you don't know him well enough, it might be difficult to deal with him. But Stuart's deck. Well, how should I put it? He should be the least afraid of this kind of deck that purely relies on the magic elf. So, I think Stuart's chances of winning are higher. Geoffrey was surprised and said, "Are you so sure Stuart will win? Dake Dimming just defeated you." Mike Owen smiled bitterly. "That's unexpected." Geoffrey suddenly said, "Oh, I thought you went all out." Mike Owen said helplessly, "It was unexpected when I went all out." Geoffrey sneered and didn't look at him anymore. In the audience area, Arvette was bored for a long time, but she finally pulled herself together. Her purpose for coming here was to see what the model Easter egg was, and also to draw a prize to see if she could get lucky. In the end, she was lucky and saw her baby again. However, the gap between the matches was too long. It had been more than 2.5 hours since Dake's last match. She didn't see Dake for 2.5 hours, and her mood gradually dropped. "I can finally see him again." Arvette was excited for a while, but suddenly became depressed. "But after this match, I don't know when the next time will be. Why isn't summer vacation here yet?" Ever since her baby was recruited by the Shang Malian, the Valkyrie of the kingdom became a little worried. Freedom City. City Lord Montefiore and Aurora also gradually focused their attention because Dake Dimming had reappeared in the arena. Although their thoughts were different. However, both mother and daughter wanted to know more about him. As for Anna and Luo C in the ring, they were a little worried. Stuart Phone had been very eye-catching in the qualifiers and the first round of the competition. As first-year students, the two of them could feel the difference between them just by watching from the sidelines. It was as if they were a heavenly moat. It was hard to imagine how he could defeat such a strong opponent. Don't worry, didn't Dake already defeat a third-year senior? That Owen or something. Anna saw that Luo C was a little worried, so she comforted her. "It's Owen." Luo C couldn't help but look up at the sky and said, "I always feel that Owen didn't use his full strength. Just like when we met on Valentine's Day, he seemed to be deliberately slacking." Anna blinked and said doubtfully, "Is that so? But I think he's quite serious." After listening to the two, Panduola said, "Mike Owen's real strength is not that simple." Luo C immediately said, "Look, senior sister must know more than us. Senior Owen might have other motives. But this senior, Stuart Phone, is a bit of a nuisance." Poor Mike Owen. He did use his full strength, but not many people believed him. Anna stuffed a piece of milk candy into her mouth and said, "Whatever you say. Anyway, I hope Dake can keep winning." Luo C said, "I hope so too." Panduola said, "Then let's cheer for him." Luo C was worried again. "It's a pity that I forgot to bring that sign." The girl's worries were like the clouds in the sky, gathering and dispersing at will. Dake Dimming didn't know that his every move was affecting the thoughts of so many people. After he found out about the competition schedule, he shook hands with Stuart Phone on the stage and did all the pre-match etiquette. Then, both of them came down from the stage and went to the contestant stands on both sides. Red team, Stuart Phone. Blue team, Dake Dimming. It was still the blue team's contestant stand. When Dake went up the stairs again, he waved in Yvette's direction again, hoping to get a response. He found that after he recovered his memories from his previous life, he missed his family even more. But when he observed Yvette's reaction, his eyebrows jumped. He suddenly noticed a group of very conspicuous people walking in from the back of the audience. Elder Prince Charles? Why is he here? After the announcement, the elder prince hurried over and walked into the audience with a gloomy face. Even though the seats in the front row were all taken, he was still one of the heirs of this country. He had many ways to make people give up their seats. Therefore, after he entered the hall, he went straight to the first row, which was only a few seats away from Yvette. Their eyes met, but it was gone in a flash. Yvette put down the hand that she had just raised, and the expression on her face gradually became serious. "Did you hear the news so soon?" Yvette whispered. Claire also saw the elder prince and the others, and said, "Since he's here, Elisha should be here soon." Yvette could not help but frown. This is not a good sign. Claire comforted her. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Yvette shook her head. Some things can't be shaken off once they stick to you. I might have to trouble you next. Claire smiled. Why are you being so polite with me? Anna and Anchi, who were next to her, played the role of ignorant little princesses perfectly. They stuck to her and said, Is Big Sister coming too? After playing, Anchi suddenly looked up and said, Tesse? She really came. Anna lowered her head and whispered, I suddenly have an ominous feeling. Anchi's expression also changed slightly. She looked around and said hesitantly, It can't be, right? Not long after, first Princess Elisha, who was dressed in casual clothes, came to the first row and squeezed Anna and Anchi into the same seat. On the other hand, Princess Elisa occupied the position between Arvette and Claire. The twin princesses looked sad. What are you looking at? On the player platform, Dake suddenly heard Stuart Phone's voice from the opposite side. He turned around and injected magic to activate the card table. When the loudspeaker was fully activated, he said, I'm looking directly at the future. Huh? Stuart Phone did not expect Dake to answer like this at all. He hesitated for a long time before saying, Prophet? Dake blinked and could not help but laugh. Don't you think it's very deep to speak like this? F***ck. Stuart Phone realized that he had been fooled, but his expression was still gloomy. Talking won't help you win. First-year students will always be first-year students. I'm different from Mike Owen. I won't go easy on you just because you're young. Next, I'll let you know the real difference between first-year and third-year students. Dake nodded and said seriously, I'm looking forward to it. The duel with Senior Owen was indeed not very satisfying. After watching so many battles between upperclassmen, he also wanted to see an intense battle that would last more than 18 rounds. He just didn't know if Senior Stuart Phone would be able to do it. Both players, please enter the preparation stage immediately. The referee suddenly blew the whistle. Dake took out the deck from the card pack and neatly placed it into the card slot on the card table. The card table reacted and immediately began to shuffle the cards automatically. On the opposite side, Stuart Phone also put his deck into the card slot with a serious expression. The scene of the shuffling of the cards was projected into the air by the magic projection. At this time, the eldest prince and princess, who had just sat down, looked over. The exchange between the two players through the loudspeaker spread throughout the stadium. The first prince and first princess were both very sensitive to Dark's words when he said, Zhuangbility. The eldest princess even hesitated. Duke, could it be that not only does Dake have the talent of a hero, but he also has the talent of a prophet? Yvette blinked, but Claire could not help but roll her eyes. She was speechless. Where did you hear that he has the talent of a hero? Elisha was stunned. She could not help but close her mouth and think. But after thinking for a moment, she still said, he can summon holy swords. Those who could summon holy swords were, of course, heroes. Elisha felt that there was no problem with the answer she had analyzed from the information she had obtained. Yvette and Claire looked at each other. The two quickly realized that because they clearly knew that the ones with the talent of a hero were Dake's two magic spirits, they subconsciously ignored this basic logic. It should be known that although Yvette could use part of the holy swords, she could not summon holy swords. She used the holy sword curse, which was also the fantasy weapon curse, to summon a gun. Dake's operation of summoning holy swords through magic cards was indeed very easy to misunderstand. If it was spread wrongly, it might lead to some problems that should not have arisen. After Yvette thought it through, she said softly, Elisha, your eyes can even deceive you, let alone the information passed on by others. You should learn to rely on your own thinking to analyze the truth. Next, let's watch this duel carefully. Elisha could only bite her lip and say, Good word. Beep. Preparation stage. 30s. Health. 8,000. 2 in 1. 4,100 plus. It's so uncomfortable without a slot. Chapter 392. The moment the whistle sounded, the 30-second countdown for the preparation stage was projected. The audience, who were excitedly discussing the outcome of the contestants, was also affected by the whistle and quieted down instantly. On the other hand, the two duelists on the platform were already fully focused. For Stuart Phone, whether it was a decision based on temperament or interests, he had to win this duel. He was not as hesitant as Mike Owen. He put in the most effort from the beginning. Dake Diming's desire to win was also slightly aroused by him. Both of them reached for their cards almost at the same time. Then, they placed exactly 5 magic cards in their left hand, spread them out in a fan shape, and turned them to the front. After Stuart Phone checked the 5 cards in his hand, he was obviously delighted. He seemed to have drawn a good card. Doc glanced at the red team's platform 100 meters away and focused on the cards in his hand. Fantasy Beast. Ibu. Memorize in 1 second. https://m. Vipkanchu. VIP Pride 3. Secretary of the Sorcerer. Meow Meow. Wishful Die. He could not help but frown. Compared to the 5 magic cards that Linley had drawn from the beginning of the duel with Mike Owen, 2 of the 5 magic cards had appeared twice. They were Pride 3 and Meow Meow. But there was no Curse Cage, Little Devil Beast. Without Curse Cage, Little Devil, it meant that he could not summon a 4-star Great Devil. But with Magic Beast, Ibu, there was another option. In addition, Secretary of the Sorcerer was not bad either. It was this last, Wishful Die. It was a long story. After Dake refined the Wishful Die, he only wanted to use it to reverse the situation. He did not expect that there would be a day when he drew it in the first round. If the Wishful Die was not a performance card, it could only be dealt with as a useless card. Excluding the Wishful Die, there were only 4 magic cards left. Among the 4 magic cards, 3 of them were magic elf cards that could be summoned directly. First of all, we can exclude the Secretary of the Sorcerer. Summoning the Magician Secretary is equivalent to giving up the first summoning opportunity. If we encounter a strong offensive-type Magic Guide Fairy, the Magic Guide Ball will be defenseless. Then the only ones left are Illusory Beast, Ivan, and Meow Meow. Summoning Illusory Beast, Ibu, will have the same problem. Ibu can't fly like the Little Devil, so it lacks the most basic defensive ability. To be safe, I can only summon Meow Meow. At this thought, Dake's gaze sharpened. Summoning Meow Meow was the result of elimination, but it was also the best choice. Among the 3-star magic elves, there weren't many that could compare to Meow Meow. 30 seconds passed in the blink of an eye. When the countdown reached 0, the preparation stage instantly switched to the battle stage. Then, the players from both sides started to attack at the same time. In the name of Dake Diming, I summon Meow Meow. In the name of Stuart Phone, I summon the Shadow Worm. The high-spirited voice spread through the entire stadium through the loudspeaker, driving the audience's emotions to soar. On the commentary platform, Zach Wilson subtly glanced at Angus Jeffrey in the ring. During lunch, Jeffrey sent a message to him through one of the club members, reminding him to pay attention in the upcoming competition. Zach Wilson had no choice but to pay attention. He followed the atmosphere of the stadium and said excitedly, "It's actually Shadow Worm." Contestant Stuart Phone of the 3rd-year Aristocrat Academy actually drew his core magic elven in the first round, the Shadow Worm, that's known for being troublesome. It's hard to imagine how Dake Diming will deal with it. Oh, he summoned a cute kitten. Let's see how cute his cat is. The sudden change in the commentary style surprised the audience. But Angus Jeffrey in the ring had a smile on his face, quite satisfied. "That's really cute." As Wilson pretended to exclaim in surprise, Meow Meow appeared in the blue team's summoning area. It stood there, only a little taller than the blue team's magic elven ball. It could be said to be very petite. Although it was the first time it appeared in such an occasion, Meow Meow clearly didn't have any stage fright. It even shook its whiskers and leisurely looked around. In the audience, Yvette's mood eased a lot when she saw the cat appear. She couldn't help but comment, "This magic elven named Meow Meow has a hint of cleverness in its eyes." It's really not bad. I think that's evil, right? Claire rolled her eyes. Is this the hero cat you were talking about? It doesn't look like it. Prince Charles furrowed his brows. His confidant beside him hurriedly said, "No, the one with hero aptitude is a white cat. This is a gray cat." The first prince was clearly in a bad mood. First it's a white cat, then a gray cat. Why are they both cats? Where's the other magic elven with hero aptitude? Is it a lion? Confidant, in reply to your highness, lions are also felines. First prince. Scram. On the blue side's platform. Dake wasn't affected by the commentary. He had carefully observed Stuart Phone's last duel and had a certain level of understanding of his magic elven. The shadow worm, that was summoned at the same time as Meow Meow, was a giant caterpillar-like insect about 1 meter long. The skin of the shadow worm was pitch black without any luster. It had 3 pairs of legs, a shuttle-shaped head, and no eyes or nose. Its tail drooped into the shadow, and its full appearance couldn't be seen. Card name, Shadow Worm. Type, Elven card. Level, ****. Race, Insect. Attribute, Dark. Magic power, 1000. Attack, 1000. Defense, 1000. Ultimate skills, Latent Shadow, Worming Shadow, Shadow Hole. Stuart Phone's Shadow Worm had a total of 3 sure kill skills. It was a genuine orange card. Together with the other 2 Shadow Ghost cards, he already had a total of 3 orange cards. Shadow Worm wasn't considered a strong offensive magic elven. It belonged to the infrastructure category in Stuart Phone's deck. In other words, it was a foundation-laying type. Moreover, it had the same ultimate skill as Shadow Ghost, Latent Shadow. It could sneak into the shadow. This made it difficult for Meow Meow, who purely attacked with physical attacks, to cause effective damage. If he wanted to restrain Stuart Phone's Shadow series of magic elves, Single Scabbard was a very good choice. However, one of the joys of a duel was to set limits for oneself. If he couldn't draw Single Scabbard, how should he deal with it? Dake thought quickly and ordered Meow Meow to stay put. Meow, Meow Meow meowed obediently. Then, it placed its hand across its abdomen, tapped the ground with 1 foot, and jumped lightly. It turned a 360-degree circle in the air and landed lightly. It posed for the audience as if it was performing a dance. Dake knew that it always had a strong desire to show off, so he turned a blind eye. In the end, the shadow worm on the opposite side didn't attack. Instead, it used another ultimate skill, Worming Shadow. Worming Shadow, like a worm, it digs holes in the shadow. Shadow Cave increases the number of holes the shadow worm can dig in the shadow and the duration of the shadow cave. Connects the holes together, allowing individuals with the latent shadow ability to travel through the shadow cave. 1 shadow worm could dig out 3 shadow caves. Even if the light shone, the shadow cave wouldn't disappear immediately. The power of the shadow would increase its duration. After being summoned, the shadow worm began to build its foundation. It dug out its first shadow cave in the middle of the red team's summoning area. Then, with a sudden tug, it actually dragged the red magic ball into the shadow cave. If Dake hadn't seen it in the previous duel, he would have been very surprised. Not only could the shadow worm drag the magic ball into the shadow cave, it could also drag other magic elves into it. In short, it was very difficult to deal with. Dake counted the cooldowns. While the shadow worm was building its foundation, he immediately summoned Illusory Beast, Ibu. Squeak! Ibu appeared in the light of the summoning and immediately jumped behind Meow Meow to protect itself. Seeing Dake summon an illusory beast, Stuart Phone couldn't help but sneer. His second shadow worm had appeared in the red team's summoning area. The appearance of this shadow worm meant that he could dig out a total of 6 shadow caves in the arena. With these 6 shadow caves, his shadow series of magic elves would be able to move around freely, appearing and disappearing unpredictably. Next, it's time to use this magic card. Stuart Phone took out the third magic card. While counting the cooldowns, he carefully observed Dake's magic elves. The two magic elves that hadn't appeared in the previous duel were unfamiliar to him. But suddenly, he heard Wilson's strange cry. "Oh my God! Another cute kitten!" Dake Dimming summoned another cute kitten. Does he like kittens that much? Stuart couldn't help but frown at the exaggerated acting and the deliberately strange tone of voice. More importantly, Dake Diming's illusory beast was a dog, right? What was wrong with Wilson? Could he not differentiate between a dog and a cat? Stuart Phone was puzzled and immediately began to summon the third magic card. "It's a fox." But Dake Diming's voice through the loudspeaker made his expression freeze, and the corner of his mouth twitched. "So it's a fox?" In that brief moment of distraction, Stuart Phone suddenly saw Dake Dimming raise the third magic card. "Damn!" He cursed and hurriedly began to summon. But if he was one step too slow, he would always be too slow. Dake held Pride 3 between two fingers and fiercely slashed it. A dark golden light shot directly toward illusory beast, Ibu. Ibu understood and suddenly jumped. Its entire body was enveloped in the light of pride, and the emblem of pride lit up above its head. More light was absorbed by Pride's emblem, turning into a blazing golden light without a trace of darkness. The increasingly hot and intense golden light gradually turned it into a large sun, competing with the sun in the sky. The enigmatic Wilson and the clueless audience were instantly attracted by this scene. Especially Freedom City's Sun Warrior Suna Montefiore and Aurora Montefiore, who inherited her bloodline, frowned as if they sensed something. They also relied on the evolved form of Pride 3. Demon Beast didn't make them feel anything. But Ibu hadn't fully evolved yet, and it made the mother and daughter's hearts flutter. What kind of magic elf is this? City Lord Montefiore couldn't help but ask. Beside her, Principal Aerti only shook her head. Because she really didn't know. Ibu's evolved form, Sun Ibu, had never appeared in public before. A cat like a purple elf swung its forked cat tail and stretched its soft limbs in the air. In the end, it still turned into a cat. Its forehead was embedded with a round red gem, and the short purple fur on its body was soft and slender, unusually sensitive. When it fell from the sky, a ray of sunlight suddenly shone down from the sun and shone into the red gem. Doc suddenly noticed that its magic power, which was already high enough, was gradually increasing. Card name, Magic Beast, Sun Ibu. Type, Elf card, level. Race, Bird Beast. Attribute, Super. Magic, 2000. Attack, 1700. Defense, 900. Ultimate skills, Magic Mirror, Psychic, Future Foresight. The magic card showed a magic value of 202 points, which made Dake realize one of the reasons why Sun Ibu was called Sun Ibu. As long as it bathed in sunlight, the red gem on Sun Ibu's forehead would absorb the sunlight and turn it into its own magic. Dake had never summoned Sun Ibu during the day, so it was only now that he suddenly realized. Sun Ibu felt its own magic increase and couldn't help but let out a high-pitched cry. The cry was filled with indescribable joy. Thus, it immediately realized that as long as it evolved into Sun Ibu, it would be able to go out on a sunny day and no longer have to worry about magic consumption. The night was the Dream Demon's home ground. The day was Ben Ibu's home ground. Sun Ibu raised its head and arrogantly looked at the two black bugs in front of it, the gem on its forehead emitting a golden red light. Sun Ibu, use Psychic. Kilo Bean. After receiving its master's order, Sun Ibu unhesitatingly released Psychic. His Psychic, which wasn't very powerful before, seemed to have undergone a qualitative change after absorbing the power of the sun. A large amount of Psychic instantly enveloped one of the shadow bugs. But the moment Sun Ivan launched his attack, a dark curtain suddenly appeared, covering the entire field like a cloak. A shadow descended. 2 in 1 4000. I've been busy all day and am a bit tired. Let's see if I can get up early tomorrow to write. I really want to quietly write in my little black room. Chapter 393. Heavy Shadows. Stuart Phone activated the third magic card in his hand at this critical moment. The entire arena was engulfed in shadows by the heavy shadows. Looking down from the arena, it was as if there were layers of gauze covering the arena, making it extremely dark and difficult to see anything. Vaguely, one could only see shadows moving under the veil of darkness. Stuart Phone's magic card seemed to have the foundation of a venue card, but he didn't know if it would be able to buff his magic guide sprite. Dake thought for a moment and immediately noticed that Ivan the Sun's mana had stopped increasing. When the heavy shadows engulfed him, Ivan the Sun didn't stop exerting his power. That enormous telekinesis clamped down on one of the shadow worms, and forcefully pulled it out of the shadow cave, then smashed it onto the ground. Bang! The sound of the object crashing onto the ground and the shadow worm's cries rang out one after another. The website was https://m. Vipkanchu. VIP. This meant that this telekinesis was at least able to unleash its power. But what should he do next? Dake thought for a moment, and magic surged at his fingertips. The blue summoning area's magic guide ball immediately shot up, breaking through the veil of darkness at an extremely fast speed and reaching the sky. Tick! The sound of the turn changing entered his ears. Dake immediately reached for a card. In just 30 seconds of the first round, the atmosphere in the arena had changed. The intense battle between the two sides was beginning to show signs. Stuart Phone also immediately reached for a card. The moment he saw the two magic guide cards, he laughed again. Immediately, the second round of summoning began without any pause. After Dake saw the magic guide cards, he pondered for a moment, then began to summon the magic guide secretary. As for the two new magic guide cards, they were temporarily added to his hand. Fairy Ivan. Fuse. The 4-star Fairy Ivan required a 4-star magic guide sprite as a sacrifice to summon it. However, Dake only had the 3-star Meow Meow, the 2-star magic guide secretary, and the 4-star Sun Ivan. At this time, of course, he couldn't sacrifice Sun Ivan. Thus, he could not immediately summon Fairy Ibu. As for the other, fusion, he could only store it for the time being since he had yet to gather all the materials for the fusion. To be honest, this card luck could only be considered average. 3 seconds later, both sides completed the summoning of the fourth magic card at the same time. In front of the blue team's contestant stage, not even half a meter away from the contestant stage, the thick black grimoire was summoned. Dake's eyes flashed slightly. He injected a trace of magic into the magic card, and then the magic secretary flipped open. Like the sound of a zither, a melodious chant sounded softly. That was the incantation for the normal summoning spell, which was also the summoning spell that Dake had recorded beforehand. Just like how it was difficult to recognize the single sword scabbard as a magic guide elf, the magic guidebook was the same. It looked like an ordinary book and gave off the feeling of an equipment card. It would subconsciously cause people to overlook it and not target it with attacks. Therefore, when it first appeared, it was relatively safe to a certain extent. But once it was understood and studied by others, in order to not let Stuart Phone pay too much attention to the magic secretary, after Dake ordered it to start chanting, he immediately ordered Meow Meow and Sun Ibu below to attack. As for himself, he used all his strength to control the magic ball to avoid the incoming attack. This was because Stuart Phone had finally launched his attack after this summoning. The brand new magic guide elf that was summoned in the red team summoning area was a nearly 2-meter tall giant pot. That was the pot of Ghost Rot Tan, Stuart Phone's other core magic guide elf. The color of the pot of Ghost Rot Tan was deathly white. The porcelain-like pot was engraved with black ghost totems. 2 poisonous snakes were twisted into the shape of vines, forming the pot's ears. This mere 3-star magic guide elf was like the mouth of an abyss, emitting a terrifying aura. In Stuart Phone's previous duel, Dake had personally seen him use this pot of Ghost Rot Tan to summon a 5-star magic guide elf, Shadow Ghost. Card name, Pot of Ghost Rot Tan. Type, Elf card. Level, ****. Race, Undying Species. Attribute, Spectre/Darkness. Magic Power, 1600. Attack, 0. Defense. 100. Sure Kill skill. Ghost in Pot. Using the Sure Kill skill, Ghost in Pot, to devour the energy of Spectre and Darkness to summon a magic guide elf of the same race and attribute that was not higher than himself. Every summon consumed more magic power than the summoning target's magic power. When Stuart Phone summoned this Pot of Ghost Rot Tan, Dake realized the core reason why Stuart Phone used Heavy Shadows. It was clearly not purely used to block vision. Sure enough, in the next moment, Stuart Phone chanted in a low voice, "Devour, howl, and then be born. Ghost in Pot." That Pot of Ghost Rot Tan suddenly trembled, and the pot's lid automatically opened, revealing the pitch-black abyss-like interior. A suction force appeared out of nowhere, and the shadows that filled the sky were sucked in with a whistling sound, gradually forming a huge whirlpool. Ghostly wails and howls were emitted from the Pot of Ghost Rot Tan, and a gloomy and terrifying aura spread out. Under Dake's command, Sun Ivan and Meow Meow, who had just passed through half the area, were immediately frightened into stopping. On the contestant platform, Dake could see that the curtain of shadows was thinning at an extremely fast speed, and his field of vision was becoming more and more visible. Sure enough, the blocking vision was just an illusion. Sun Ivan, foresee the future. Kilo Bean. Sun Ivan heard the command, and suddenly raised his head, the red gem on his forehead releasing rays of light like the sun, dispersing the surrounding shadows in a split second. Then, a terrifying wave of telekinesis was released, but nothing happened. Sun Ivan stopped moving, and under Dake's command, sped up towards the Pot of Ghost Rot Tan. Meow. Meow Meow was not to be outdone, its hands touching the ground, and its 4 limbs galloped forward. Destroy that Ghost Rot Tan. The Sure Kill skill of the Pot of Ghost Rot Tan, Ghost in the Pot. Although there was a cooldown between each summoning, as long as the cooldown was over, it could continuously summon a suitable magic guide fairy. If one wanted to stop its summoning, they had to destroy it. But at this moment, Stuart Phone's 2 shadow worms had already dug out a total of 6 shadow holes in the red area. Sun Ivan and Meow Meow were about to reach the Pot of Ghost Rot Tan. A shadow worm suddenly drilled out of one of the shadow holes, its fat body suddenly elongated, and its shuttle-like head fiercely slammed into Meow Meow's body. Meow. Meow Meow angrily turned around and swiped at it. But that shadow worm left as soon as it touched it, and in the blink of an eye, drilled into another shadow hole. Although the shadow worm, with only 1,000 attack, couldn't do much damage to Meow Meow's 900 defense, this kind of tickle-like attack was still annoying to no end. Meow Meow stopped moving because of this. Sun Ivan continued to move forward. After the other shadow worm was smashed by his telekinesis, it didn't come out to seek death. Sun Ivan arrived in front of the Pot of Ghost Rot Tan in the blink of an eye, leaped up without hesitation, and slammed into the Pot of Ghost Rot Tan. Bang! Unexpectedly, the Pot of Ghost Rot Tan was unexpectedly smashed into pieces by the head-on collision. Zach Wilson's commentary came to a halt because of this. But Stuart Phone sneered and said, "Too late." This "too late" was powerful and resonant. Through the loudspeaker, the volume was amplified and spread throughout the stadium. Stuart Phone's confidence made the audience unable to help but pay attention. The Pot of Ghost Rot Tan suddenly shattered. The ceramic shards were still flying in the air. Only a thin layer of the shadow curtain was left, and with a final whistle, it was sucked into the pot's mouth. The pitch-black vortex was still spinning at high speed. A magic card in Stuart Phone's hand emitted a strong light because of this. That was clearly the proof that the Sure Kill skill of the Ghost in the Pot had successfully linked with the magic card. This meant that the summoning was already in progress. Come out, Ghost King in the Pot. Stuart Phone suddenly raised the magic card high and roared as if the outcome was already decided. In an instant, from the inner vortex of the Pot of Ghost Rot Tan, there was a screeching sound like an evil spirit. A pitch-black spectre elfin suddenly drilled out from the vortex. Its huge body, like a giant python, rushed into the sky in the blink of an eye and actually reached the height of the contestant stage. Stuart Phone's eyes were filled with excitement. He stretched out his hand and touched the back of the giant snake's neck. He said eerily, "Ghost King in the pot, it's time to let the prey know what real horror is." Hiss! The giant python named the Ghost King in the pot suddenly opened its bloody mouth and let out an ear-piercing shriek. Card name, Ghost King in the pot. Type, Elfin card, level, race, undying species, attribute, Spectre/Dark type. Magic power, 2600. Attack, 2800. Defense, 1700. Sure kill skills, Seal in the pot, Pot of Sealing, Ghost Snake Carnival. 3 sure kill skills, but this wasn't an orange card, it was a purple card. The appearance of the Ghost King in the pot made Wilson, who was on the commentary platform, shrink his eyes. It's not a shadow ghost. As the duel entered the second round, Wilson couldn't help but put away the sarcastic tone he used at the beginning. Instead, he entered a state of full concentration as he commentated. Stuart Phone's method of using the pot of ghost rattan to summon a shadow ghost had appeared many times in the duel. However, this was the first time he summoned the Ghost King in the pot. It could even be said that this was the first time the Ghost King in the pot had appeared. Damn, when did he successfully create the Ghost King in the pot? Angus Jeffrey, the president of the Aristocratic History Research Society, couldn't help but let out a low laugh. The Ghost King in the pot and the pot of ghost rattan were magic elves that were closely related. Therefore, any mage who studied the pot of ghost rattan would know about the Ghost King in the pot. The Ghost King in the pot seemed to have 3 sure kill skills, but one of them was called Seal in the pot. It was a self-imposed seal. Seal in the pot, a magic elven that possesses the seal in the pot. It can only be summoned by the sure kill skill Ghost King in the pot, but it can reduce the magic required to summon it. Therefore, although it had 3 sure kill skills, it was only a purple card. However, this didn't mean that it was weaker than an orange card. Ghost King in the pot, bite it to pieces. The Ghost King in the pot, which was as black as ink, had large folds of skin on the back of its neck. The tip of its tail was as illusory as a ghost. It obeyed its master's command and swooped down at son Ivan, who was closest to it. Its bloody maw suddenly opened, and its scarlet tongue quickly retracted. Its 2 fangs released layers of ghostly aura. However, son Ivan only took a step back and charged at the Ghost King in the pot's tail without any vigilance. Ha! The Ghost King in the pot opened its huge maw and bit at son Ivan. The petite son Ivan couldn't even fill its mouth. However, when almost everyone thought that son Ivan would be swallowed into the snake's stomach, the gem on son Ivan's forehead shone brightly. Due to the dissipation of the shadow curtain, the sunlight directly shone through, causing the power of son Ivan's telekinesis to increase once again. The Ghost King in the pot's huge maw was forcibly held open, unable to close. Son Ivan suddenly sped up and avoided the snake's maw. Then he ran to the tip of the Ghost King in the pot's ghostly tail, raised his paw, and viciously slapped down. Compared to the snake's body that was covered in snake scales, the snake's tail was a very obvious weakness. Son Ivan didn't hesitate to attack this weak point. Awoo! As expected, after this slap, the Ghost King in the pot flew out with a strange cry, as if it had been stepped on in a painful spot. The audience, who originally thought that the Ghost King in the pot's ferociousness and cheers, immediately shut their mouths. If they could empathize with it, it would be like being kicked in the crotch. Although in reality, the Ghost King in the pot's mana didn't decrease too much because of this, the pain and humiliation caused it to suddenly go berserk. Ghost Snake Carnival. Seeing this, Stuart Phone took advantage of the situation and gave an order. Thus, in the midst of the Ghost King in the pot's berserk rage, one after another ghost snakes drilled out from its shadow. These ghost snakes were about 1 to 2 meters long, and their necks didn't have any folds of skin. Apart from this, they seemed to be made from the same mold as the Ghost King in the pot. In just a few seconds, dozens of ghost snakes drilled out and attacked son Ivan in a dense swarm. However, son Ivan only looked regretfully at the retracted ghost snake's tail, and his eyes quickly turned as he thought. On the other side, Meow Meow, who had taken a shadow worm out of the shadow cave with great difficulty, was also targeted by some of the ghost snakes. However, it opened its mouth, and the gold coin on its forehead flashed with golden light. Tick. 2 in 1 4000 plus. More updates tomorrow. Chapter 394. Battle Stage 30s. When the countdown for the third round began, both contestants took out their cards, but no one lowered their heads to look at the two new cards in their hands. Both contestants were focused on the stage. Ghost King in Urns used Ghost Snake Carnival to summon dozens of ghost snakes. 30 of them surrounded son Ivan, while the other 10 targeted Meow Meow. In a duel, one had to adapt according to the situation. Even though Stuart Phone had set up 6 shadow caves, the final summoned Ghost King in Urns didn't have the ability to hide shadows. It didn't use it to attack in a roundabout way, but instead relied on its advantage of being a high star to attack forcefully. The 40 ghost snakes split into 2 groups, setting off a ghost snake carnival. Meow Meow bore the brunt of it, but it wasn't afraid. It grabbed the fat shadow worm with one hand, and the gold coin on its forehead flashed with golden light. One gold coin after another fell from the sky and was thrown out by it. Every gold coin was like a dart, accurately shooting towards the ghost snakes that were crawling towards it. Remember the URL. VIP Kanchu. VIP. This was a technique learned from the Hawkman's feather dance. The ghost snakes that were hit by the gold coins were clearly injured, but they didn't disappear. Meow Meow immediately understood the strength of these ghost snakes. It squinted its eyes, and with a harmless kitten claw, it cut off the life of the shadow worm in its hand, and then charged towards the dozen ghost snakes. It gave off the feeling of a single rider against 1,000. On the other side, son Ivan, who was surrounded by 30 ghost snakes, held his head high, the gem on his head shining brightly. The powerful psychokinesis formed an invisible barrier, blocking the 30 or so ghost snakes. The Ghost King in a jar probably didn't expect that the ghost snake it summoned couldn't even touch the fur of the 2 magic elves. Before its fury was extinguished, it roared fiercely and dove down again. Bang! The black snake's bite directly smashed through the telekinesis barrier, and this time, it crashed into son Ivan with unstoppable force. The Ghost King in a jar's attack power was already higher than son Ivan's. Last time, its bite was blocked because it was caught off guard. This time, son Ivan's telekinesis couldn't block it no matter what. Stuart Phone's gaze was cold. Killing the opponent's high-star magic guide sprite in the early stages of the duel would not only weaken the opponent's combat strength, but more importantly, it would also attack the opponent's morale. After all, high-level magic guiding fairies were all summoned through multiple operations. The successful summoning would bring confidence to the Archmage, and it was where the faith gathered. Once the high-star magical guiding sprite that he had spent so much effort to summon was directly killed, then it would be very easy for him to be defeated like a collapsing mountain, and he would never be able to recover from that setback. Many of the newbies who had just come into contact with duels were unable to cope with the psychological disparity. However, as Stuart Phone stared at the situation in the arena, he suddenly noticed that Dake Dimming had lowered his head to check the 2 new magic cards in his hands. "Did you give up on that magic guide, elf?" Just as this thought flashed through his mind, Stuart Phone's vision was suddenly blinded by a strong light. He was shocked. What happened? He only heard a loud sound. In the sky above the arena, a golden ball of light that looked like the sun appeared without any warning. That ball of light instantly exploded, releasing rays of light that were like blades downwards. The audience was so stimulated by the sudden appearance of the strong light that they covered their eyes with their hands, but there were still some who endured the pain and looked hard. They saw that every ray of light seemed to have a guidance system, accurately shooting all the red magic guiding sprites in the arena. Those over 40 ghost snakes were all pierced by the golden light, and they quickly disappeared under the continuous illumination of the golden light. The Ghost King in Urns, who was the focus of attention, howled miserably. Its whole body trembled, and it was obvious that it was heavily injured. This sudden reversal caused everyone who witnessed this scene to reveal astonishment in their eyes. No one noticed how the golden ball of light that was gradually disappearing was emitted. The situation in the arena had changed in an instant. Is it a delay type of trap? But I didn't see him summon any other magic guiding cards. Stuart Phone's eyes were already tearing up from the stimulation. His thoughts did not stop, but he still could not guess the answer. In his anger, Stuart Phone roared angrily. Ghost King in Urns, continue. Roar. The Ghost King in Urns responded to its master's command, roaring while enduring the piercing pain all over its body. Like a high-speed train, it once again crashed into Ivan the Sun. Meow meow. Fraud. But at that moment, Dake Diming's voice also sounded at the same time. After the Grey Cat's attack target was destroyed by the sudden appearance of the light beam, it turned around and sped away without stopping, and it had already arrived beside the Ghost King in Urns. After receiving its master's command, Meow Meow immediately turned around and leaped quickly. Its right paw was raised high, and as if it was using the cat fist, it viciously clawed at the scarlet snake eyes of the Ghost King in Urns. But the Ghost King in Urns didn't even look at the harmless little cat. It only shook its head, casually, as it crashed into Ivan the Sun, trying to knock it away. However, when the enormous snake head collided with the tiny cat paw, an extremely strange power was suddenly produced. The Ghost King in Urns suddenly felt its head go soft, and the force of the collision plummeted. But the soft cat paw contained a terrifying power. Under this situation, the Ghost King in Urns. It found that it was completely unable to resist the power of the cat paw, and its huge snake body was forcefully slapped away. Boom! The Ghost King in Urns rolled violently on the ground. The entire arena suddenly quieted down, and only the sound of it rolling could be heard. Ivan the Sun, who had been attacked one after another, still held his head high, and glanced at Meow Meow with an arrogant gaze. It was as if an arrogant queen was looking at the warrior who had protected her with a look of approval. Meow Meow. The arena fell into a short period of silence. Stuart Phone took a deep breath, and his face was as dark as the sea. Dake Dimeng, who had already expected this, seized the time to think of a countermeasure. The golden ball of light just now was just the future foresight that Ivan the Sun had used in the last round. Future foresight. Foresight of the future, causing the designated area to fall into a future attack state. After 30 seconds, the future attack state will be removed, and the opponent in the area will be damaged by the superpower attribute. But after taking the future foresight and deception attacks in succession, the Ghost King in Urns was still standing strong. Dake knew very well that the situation that seemed to have turned for the better was still disadvantageous to him. In addition to the 2 magic cards he had drawn in the third round, he still had 5 magic cards in his hand. Pride Eye, Dream Demon, Ivan the Fairy, Fusion, Wishful Dice. Among the 5 magic cards, Pride Eye and Dream Demon were new cards. Pride Eye could be used at critical moments, while Dream Demon could only be summoned at the right time. If he wanted to completely kill the Ghost King in Urns, he would have to wait for another round. Dake looked at the countdown on the panel with a serious expression. Time passed quickly. The third round was over in the blink of an eye. He reached his hand into the card slot and was ready to draw a card. But after a short moment of silence, Stuart Phone forced himself to calm down. After all, he was a top student in his 3rd year. Even though the situation was constantly changing, it wasn't like he didn't have this kind of experience. But before this, he only had this kind of feeling when he dueled with someone from the same year. But he's only a 1st year, and I'm a 3rd year. Stuart Phone gritted his teeth so hard that they almost broke. The moment the 3rd round was about to end, he didn't summon a new magic card. Instead, he gave the Ghost King in Urns a final order. Ghost King in Urns, use the final killing move, Urn Seal. Thus, for the first time, the giant python with the folds of skin on its neck raised its tail, which was its weak point. The tip of the ghostly tail gradually lit up with a black light. A faint, black urn gradually formed in the swaying black light. A dark and gloomy aura was emitted from it. The sun, Ivan, seemed to have sensed the threat in advance and suddenly shivered. Meow Meow also stood up with a serious expression. According to legend, after the Ghost Vine Urn gave birth to the Ghost King in Urns, it would seal a new sacrifice and trap it in the urn, slowly refining it into a new Ghost King in urns. And the killing move of the Ghost King in urns, the urn seal, was derived from this. After it sealed the magic fairy, not only would it be locked in the urn, but its consciousness would also be suppressed, its magic power would be sucked away, and it would lose the ability to resist. The Ghost King in urns, who was gasping for breath, shot out a scarlet gaze between the sun, Ivan, and Meow Meow. When Stuart Phone didn't specify a target, it was judging based on its own likes and dislikes. Who should it seal? In other words, who was more despicable? Was it that arrogant purple cat? Or was it that grey cat that sent it flying with a slap? The Ghost King in urns generally knew that it should target the son, Ivan, but the humiliation of being sent flying by Meow Meow still lingered in its heart. So, after only 2 seconds of thinking, it threw the black urn at Meow Meow. Meow. Meow Meow's hair stood on end, and it immediately wanted to escape. But the black urn was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, it was in front of it. The gigantic black pot projected a cylindrical shadow that enveloped the top of his head. Son Ivan. At this critical moment, Meow Meow suddenly felt an object crash into its side. Bean. It only heard a familiar cry, and then it was sent flying. Boom. As it was sent flying, Meow Meow forced itself to turn back, tears in its eyes. The little Ibu that it had never looked at, the evolved Sun Ibu, the Sun Ibu that it had been criticizing in its heart just a moment ago, had shown the side of sacrificing himself for the cat at this critical moment, using his own sacrifice as the price to save it from a terrible crisis. Meow. Meow Meow, who was in the middle of its own emotional performance, suddenly let out a puzzled meow the moment it landed. Almost at the same time, most of the audience also let out puzzled voices at this moment. Bang! Stuart Phone, who had just calmed down, slammed his hand on the card table. Only Dake Dimming was not shocked at all. Just now, when he called out at the critical moment, the son Ivan, who was originally unwilling to make a move, reluctantly made a move, and took the initiative to meet the terrifying black urn with the power of the seal. However, the moment the black pot hit it, it was reflected back and hit the Ghost King in the pot, who had released the black pot almost immediately. Then, the Ghost King in urn personally experienced what the urn seal was. Magic mirror. Continuously reflect magic when the user is present, nullifying part of the target's transformation skills, and reflecting them back to the user of the skill. The black fog coming out of the black pot twisted into a black chain and wrapped around the Ghost King in the pot like a snake. Then, it dragged the Ghost King in the pot into the black pot that was growing bigger and bigger as it spun. The Ghost King in urn that was summoned from the vase of ghost vines was once again trapped in the urn with a miserable howl. The black urn closed its lid and floated in the air. The Ghost King in urn, inside the urn, struggled with all its might, but as its magic power was quickly drained, the strength of its struggle clearly weakened. Beep. The sound of the turn changing sounded again. Stuart Phone reached for his card with a grudge. Dake seized the opportunity and ordered Meow Meow and the Sun Ibu to find and kill the other Shadow Worm. However, the Shadow Worm was hiding in the Shadow Cave, dragging the red magic ball with it as it fled, and there was no way to lure it out. Dake frowned slightly, and only then did he take out the 2 magic cards for the 4th turn. Urn, Curse Cage, Little Devil Beast. Although the 2 magic cards that he drew this time weren't able to lock down the situation. But when he saw the urn, Dake still felt relieved. He immediately began to summon the urn. At this time, Stuart Phone, who had suffered the painful loss of a high-star magic fairy, finally began to summon a new magic card. He reached out his hand, and a drop of extremely thick black ink dripped from the air. After that drop of ink fell to the ground, it didn't splash at all. Instead, it stuck to the ground and was absorbed into one of the shadow caves. Of course, such an obvious move couldn't be hidden from anyone. But Dake had never seen Stuart Phone use this move before, so he could only keep a warning in his heart, and couldn't make a specific decision. But a few seconds later, the urn in his hand emitted a strong light. Almost at the same time, the magic secretary finished his chant. The other magic fairy card in Dake's hand, Fairy Ibu, was also activated. Thus, in the red summoning area, 2 magic fairies appeared at the same time. One was a 3-star magic fairy, Earn. The other was a 4-star magic fairy, Fairy Ibu. This unexpected appearance of a 4-star magic fairy immediately caused an uproar among the audience. At this time, the audience's gaze gradually locked onto the magic secretary, floating in the air, and they became more and more surprised. A duet chant? In the ring, Professor Shi Erfu couldn't help but frown. She thought of the elven secret technique that allowed one to chant 2 types of incantations at the same time. But she immediately shook her head in denial. What Dake used on the spot clearly wasn't that secret technique. And a 4-star magic fairy couldn't be summoned with a simple chant. Since there were no traces of sacrifice or special summoning, it was a normal summoning technique. As everyone knows, it usually takes at least a minute to summon a 4-star magic fairy. Zach Wilson's mind was still quite nimble, and he immediately saw through the main point. But he didn't continue speaking, and when he looked at the golden-haired youth on the red platform, he couldn't help but gulp. A first-year student who had studied magic for less than a year. What on earth did he have to do to grow to such an extent? Were the famous celebrity duelists at this time as well? Were they as good as him? Zach Wilson's gaze couldn't help but turn to the entrance of the contestant passageway. The 4 seniors who had advanced to the second round were all gathered there to watch this duel. In contrast, as Dake Diming's opponent, Stuart Phone didn't have much mental energy to think about this problem at this moment. In his mind, he only thought that Dake Diming summoned a 3-star and a 4-star magic fairy at the same time. Then, he urgently started the next round of summoning. He also had quite a few cards in his hand. He had to make use of the 4 cards he'd obtained in the 3rd and 4th rounds. And at this moment, in the arena, if one carefully counted, they would discover that there were a total of 7 magic fairies left. There were a total of 5 magic fairies belonging to Dake Diming. They were Frowny Face Magic Secretary, located in front of the blue platform, Kettle, and Fairy Ibu, located in the blue summoning area, Sun Ibu, and Meow Meow, located in the red area. There were 2 magic fairies belonging to Stuart Phone. They were Frowny Face Shadow Worm, hidden in the Shadow Cave, Ghost King in Pot, sealed in the black pot. In addition, a drop of thick pitch-black ink was sucked into the Shadow Cave. The situation in the arena wasn't clear at this moment. At first glance, Dake Diming seemed to have the advantage. However, none of his magic fairies could infiltrate the Shadow Cave, nor did they have the means to destroy the Shadow Cave. Thus, it was very difficult for them to damage the red magic conducting ball hidden in the Shadow Cave. In the past, many of Stuart Phone's opponents had been trapped in this place and had been defeated helplessly. This was also the reason why many people didn't think highly of this first-year student. Even though he displayed extremely strong prediction and control abilities after entering the arena, just like the words he had said during the preparation stage, "I can see the future with my eyes." But if he couldn't directly and effectively damage the red magic conducting ball, then this duel was far from the point where victory and defeat were decided. But was Dake Diming really unable to do anything? Clearly not. No matter what kind of mystery Stuart Phone's drop of ink had, Dake wouldn't stop because of it. After summoning the Magician Secretary, at the beginning of the second round, he ordered it to summon Fairy Ibu normally. Fairy Ibu's successful appearance meant that the Shadow Worm's good days had come to an end. Fairy Ibu, use bewitching voice. Fairy Ibu danced like a dancer, her pink ribbons fluttering in the air, emitting a faint charming aura. With a mesmerizing body passive skill, Fairy Ibu was a little cutie that couldn't be ignored even if her hair was messy and her face was dirty, let alone a beautiful appearance that had been meticulously groomed. It secretly glanced at the arrogant Sun Ibu, then began to sing. Under the influence of its competitive spirit, it worked even harder to use bewitching voice. Heartsuit. As the song rose, Fairy Ibu's aura became more and more charming. There seemed to be a charm flowing in her eyes, as if droplets of water were dripping out. Even though mesmerizing body clearly stated that it was targeted at the opposite sex, the charm of cuteness didn't discriminate between genders. Even those of the same sex were charmed by it. The audience's eyes seemed to have popped out of them. Many of them even grabbed the model illustrations in their hands and felt regretful that the model this time didn't have this magical fairy in it. Amidst the grumbling, bewitching voice penetrated the shadow acupoint and affected the shadow worm that was hiding inside. That shadow worm had already suffered heavy injuries from Sun Ibu's telekinesis attack. Although the bewitching voice's power was very low, it still caused damage. But the shadow worm, with its last breath, relied on its LSP's stubbornness to drag the red magic ball and stick its head out of the shadow cave closest to the blue area. This scene of betraying the enemy almost made Stuart Phone, who was focused on his summoning, vomit blood. Luckily, he was already very familiar with summoning, so he didn't stop because of this. Seeing the shadow worm emerge from the shadow cave, Sun Ibu and Meow Meow, who had been eyeing it for a long time, naturally wouldn't let it go. Sun Ibu's telekinesis almost immediately clamped down on the shadow worm's head. Then, with a fierce force, the shadow worm's entire body was pulled out of the shadow cave. The shadow worm's tail, which was always hidden in the shadows, was finally exposed to the air. It was a soft body that looked like the head of a snail, with eyes, a nose, and a mouth. And the red magic ball was being sucked in by the soft body's mouth. "This is the head?" Dake's eyes were filled with shock. Like almost everyone who saw the shadow worm for the first time, he instinctively thought that the shadow worm's shuttle-like front end was its head, and that it could be used to dig holes in the shadows. But he never thought that it was actually its tail, and that the tail hidden in the shadows was its real head. Dake was amazed at the wonders of life structure, and he mercilessly ordered Fairy Ibu to attack. Lila Bean. Sun Ibu's red gem glowed, and the telekinesis that continuously consumed magic power was activated once more, smashing the shadow worm to the ground. Bang! After this heavy sound, the troublesome shadow worm finally turned into a dot of magic power. And the red magic ball that it was sucking in also fell down. Meow Meow, who had already revealed its claws, dashed over as fast as the wind, raising its claws and fiercely swiping down. Rip! At this point in the duel, the red magic ball was the first to be damaged. Magic power, 8,065-69. Meow Meow's basic attack was 1,500. After grabbing with all its strength, it tapped the ground with its hind legs and spun around like a dancer, abruptly swinging out a second claw. Rip! Magic power, 6,569-50-70. But when Meow Meow wanted to continue attacking, the magic ball suddenly trembled, and in the nick of time, shot up into the sky. It was Stuart Phone, who had finally freed up his hands and gathered all the magic power in his body to pull the magic ball up into the sky. Tisk! Meow Meow stuck out its tongue and licked its claws, still not satisfied. If this was the rookie competition, the life barrier, which only had 2,000 magic power, would have been completely shattered. But immediately after, Meow Meow suddenly turned its head, and a cold aura emitted from the red region made it shiver slightly. Boom! The black pot in the air suddenly exploded at this moment. A brand new magic guide sprite was born from the pot seal. On the commentary platform, Zach Wilson's eyes lit up, and he loudly said, "Another miracle." Could this be the long-lost pot in a pot tactic in the duel world? Putting the pot inside the pot, and then the pot inside the pot? Wilson's words were unclear, and the audience was also confused. But in short, Stuart Phone had indeed used the pot seal and the sealed Ghost King in a pot to summon a second-tier magic guide sprite. Breaking through the black fog, what appeared in everyone's sight was a ninja-like, black humanoid figure wrapped in an extremely thin black silk net. Only a pair of scarlet eyes were exposed on the black humanoid figure's face, and a poisonous snake was coiled around its neck. Its body was slender and flat, but it was abnormally tall, and there were 3 kunais on the outside of each of its legs. The ninja appeared with the strength of one leg and the 2 hands in a mudra posture. As soon as it landed, it pulled out a kunai from the side of its leg, lifted its veil, raised its head, and inserted the kunai into its mouth, performing a sword-swallowing trick. Then, as if it had tasted something delicious, it stuck out its tongue and licked the corner of its mouth. It was confusing. Card name, Shadowplay Ninja. Type, Sprite card. Level, Race, Undying Species. Attribute, Ghost/Dark. Magic Power, 1900. Attack, 2300. Defense, 1600. Killing Skills, Hidden Shadow, Shadowplay. Shadowplay Ninja, Hidden Shadow. Stuart Phone, who had successfully rescued the magic conducting ball, immediately gave the order. The Shadowplay Ninja immediately stopped acting and stepped into one of the shadow holes. Like a ninja using an escape technique, it sneaked into the shadow hole. Just when everyone thought that it was going to hide, it burst out from the shadow hole in just 2 seconds. At that moment, the people who were caught off guard only saw a black figure rushing out at an extremely fast speed, and then it rushed straight into the sky. There was something attached to the back of the black figure, and it angrily spread out like wings. The wind whistled, and the situation suddenly changed. Dake's gaze flashed past the Shadowplay Ninja's back, and he noticed that the target it was rushing towards was the blue magic conducting ball. Presumably, after the initial fierce battle, Stuart Phone finally understood that his own magic conducting fairy wasn't enough to crush the opponent, and so he decisively changed his strategy. As for the drop of ink that he had dripped into the shadow hole before, it should be a type of magic conducting fairy that could possess a ghost/dark type magic conducting fairy, similar to AI Ma's gold coin bug, or an equipment card with a similar effect. In short, under the possession of that drop of ink, the Shadowplay Ninja obtained the ability to fly. And if the ability of Hidden Shadow was included, then it was a genuine, flying through the sky and earth ability. Facing such a magic conducting fairy that could fly through the sky and earth, if one simply controlled the magic conducting ball to dodge, it would catch up sooner or later. Then let's go down. Dake's heart was like a mirror, and he immediately stretched out his hand, causing the blue magic conducting ball to rapidly descend and return to the blue summoning area. In the blue summoning area, Kettle and Fairy Ibu were both there, and they weren't afraid of this 5-star magic conducting fairy. The Shadowplay Ninja instantly missed, but it suddenly hovered in the air and touched the side of its leg, and another kunai appeared in its hand. In the next instant, that kunai was thrown out. But there was an extremely thin layer of shadow connecting the end of the kunai, and it spread out in the air like a thin veil. Whoosh! The kunai instantly nailed onto the magician's secretary, and then it suddenly exploded. The exploding dark energy directly blew the magician's secretary into pieces. "You think I can't see through it?" Stuart Phone's cold laughter was heard. Dake didn't say a word, and only stretched out his hand to touch the deck again. Tick. The 5th round had arrived. Bliss 3, Moon. Push incantation, here it comes. Dake rubbed his fingers, and held Dream Demon, Bliss 3, Moon, and Pride Eye in his right hand. 3 cards, 15 seconds, and one of his trump cards would appear in this duel. Then, he raised his gaze and looked at Stuart Phone's Shadowplay Ninja. He saw the Shadowplay Ninja bend its finger, and the thin veil that was spread out by the kunai suddenly bounced back. Then, it rubbed the thin veil into a thin strip, raised its head, lifted its mask, and put the thin strip into its mouth. Shadowplay Ninja. Stuart Phone's angry rebuke suddenly sounded. The Shadowplay Ninja's body stiffened, and it let go of the thin strip. But some of the audience's laughter was already heard. The Shadowplay Ninja opened its mouth like a monkey and revealed a silent smile. Stuart Phone immediately issued an order. The Shadowplay Ninja's smile instantly disappeared, and it quickly dived down. It used its fingers to pull out a kunai, and when it dived down in the air, it suddenly shot it out. As the thin veil spread out, the kunai directly shot towards the blue magic ball. Fairy Ibu used a ribbon to wrap around the magic ball, and suddenly jumped away, successfully dodging it. But the kunai landed on the ground, and it instantly exploded. This time, black smoke rose into the air from the explosion. The Shadowplay Ninja instantly rushed into the smoke, and instantly disappeared from sight. 8000/8000, originally, I wanted to increase by 10,000, but failed. Tomorrow, I will continue to aim for the target of 10,000 per day. Open a reward, until tomorrow night at 24, 1 post plus 1 update. Chapter 395. The smoke didn't disperse after the shadow play ninja entered. Instead, it became thicker and thicker, quickly spreading. In the blink of an eye, it covered half of the blue area. Fairy Ebu and Hoo-Hoo were enveloped by the smoke and lost their vision. Me. Fairy Ivan didn't hesitate to run towards the red area in his memory. Bzzz, but Kettle could only shrink back into its shell, pitifully waiting for the smoke to disperse. In a situation where it couldn't escape, it could only rely on its 2,200 defense to resist. But after it shrank back into its shell, it didn't hear any movement. After the shadow play ninja entered the smoke, it immediately hid in the shadow. Then, through the smoke's shadow, it quickly stealthily caught up to Fairy Ivan. It quietly hid in Fairy Ivan's shadow, revealing a slight snicker. Oh! Remember in 1 second. https://m. Vipkanchu. VIP at the same time. The contestants on both sides didn't stop. Dake had already begun to summon the Dream Demon. When the Shadow Play Ninja's attention was drawn away by the magic conducting ball, he seized the opportunity to summon it. On the other side, Stuart Phone naturally couldn't stop. After all, out of the 5 magic conducting fairies on the field, only 1 belonged to him. He had to think of a way to summon even more powerful magic conducting fairies in order to stabilize the situation. Thus, the 2 sides began another round of summoning. In the 10th second of the 5th round, Dake delayed his summoning because he was too focused on the Shadow Play Ninja. Only now did he summon the Dream Demon. Although the Dream Demon was a ghost-type magic conducting fairy, its appearance was very cute, making people want to hug it. The blue area was shrouded in smoke. Dake obviously couldn't summon in the smoke, so he chose to summon directly above the blue area. Thus, the Dream Demon that appeared in the light of summoning floated not far in front of the contestant stage. The Dream Demon opened its eyes wide, curiously looking around. Only when it discovered that its master was behind it did it want to turn around and hug the Dream Demon. But the invisible barrier protecting the contestant stage kept it outside. Dake rejoiced at the existence of this barrier, while taking advantage of the time to give an order, "Son Ivan, attack the magic conducting ball." Then, he immediately began to summon Bliss 3, Moon. Kilo Bean. Son Ivan, who had originally wanted to help Fairy Ivan, immediately raised his head to look at the red magic conducting ball. The gem on his forehead glowed red once more, activating telekinesis. Although telekinesis didn't have a cooldown, it would continuously consume mana. Moreover, the greater the exertion, the finer the control, the more mana would be consumed. Ivan kept using telekinesis, and even with the help of the solar energy, he had long since run out of mana. Its 2,000 points of basic magic power had dropped to about 1,000 points. This meant that it was actually very weak right now. But the master's orders were absolute. The massive telekinesis condensed again, and like an arrow, it shot toward the red magic sphere in the sky. Stuart Phone, who had just completed his first summon, had a sudden change in expression. He hastily interrupted his second summon and continued to control the magic conducting ball. However, the first attack of telekinesis was difficult to dodge, and it still hit the magic conducting ball. Magic power. 50-70, 40-65. The life enchantment's mana dropped again. The magic conducting ball was also sent flying. Stuart Phone hurriedly released his magic power to pull the magic conducting ball away from Son Ivan with all his might. Although Son Ivan could no longer release a decent telekinesis attack due to the lack of mana, Stuart Phone didn't know that. He had been intimidated, and thus delayed his summoning. However, the magic conducting card that he had successfully summoned earlier had already taken effect. A ray of pitch-black, ghost-like light shot out from the magic conducting card, and in the blink of an eye, shot into the shadow cave on the ground. An unknown change quickly occurred in the shadow cave. Stuart Phone's deck was originally formed with shadow as the core element. Once the shadow cave was completed, he would be able to use a lot more summoning spells. On the other side, when Fairy EV escaped from the smoke, dragging the blue cube ball behind her, she suddenly discovered that her own shadow was actually smiling. Fairy Ivan was so frightened by this terrifying scene that her hair stood on end. She subconsciously opened her mouth, and tiny fragments of moonlight sprinkled down, condensing into a blazing ball of light in her mouth. Moon power. Borrow the power of the moon to attack the opponent. Under the illumination of the moon, the power is doubled. Then she screamed, and spat out the ball of light at her own shadow. However, her shadow suddenly distorted, and actually dodged the ball of light's direct attack. The Shadowplay Ninja came out of the shadow in a somewhat sorry state. She held the kunai in her hand and slashed forward, trying to cut open Fairy Ivan's neck. Meow! Fairy Ivan screamed, and one of the ribbons wrapped around the blue magic conducting ball immediately broke away, lashing out at the Shadowplay Ninja like a whip. However, the Shadowplay Ninja had quick reflexes, and with a backhand swipe, the ribbons were cut. However, this back and forth gave Fairy Ivan time to retreat. She suddenly leapt backwards, pulling away from the Shadowplay Ninja. Meow Meow, who had come to help, instantly inserted herself between the two magic-conducting fairies. She extended her claws and nimbly touched the Shadowplay Ninja's body, and then left. In that instant, before the Shadowplay Ninja could react, the wings on its back suddenly melted, turning back into a pool of ink. Then, as if being sucked away, it gathered in a certain direction, and suddenly disappeared without a trace. Meow! Meow Meow's cry was filled with pleasant surprise. The ink that had disappeared had already reappeared in its palm. It was a type of tool. Thief. Empty hands. Attacks while stealing a tool, but cannot steal a tool if it already has one. As long as it was a tool, it couldn't escape Meow Meow's theft. However, just as it revealed a happy expression, it suddenly frowned. Because the ink in its hand clearly had an equipment restriction, and it couldn't equip it on its body. Meow Meow's eyes turned, and looked at the Dream Demon in the air. Yes. Dake's Dream Demon had already evolved into a Dream Demon under the effects of Bliss 3 Moon. Because of the side effects of Bliss 3 Moon, the Dream Demon was forcefully plastered to the wall of the contestant stage, and its entire face was squashed into a large pancake, looking very comical. However, Meow Meow had always felt that it was quite reliable. Meow Meow Meow. Meow Meow forcefully cried out twice. However, the Dream Demon naturally didn't pay any attention to it. Awoo! Suddenly, a terrifying roar was heard. Meow Meow fiercely turned its head. It was the Shadowplay Ninja, whose tool had been stolen by Meow Meow. She had completely emerged from Eevee's shadow. She didn't even look at the blue cube magic ball nearby. Instead, she angrily pounced towards Meow Meow. Meow Meow only had time to throw the tool in its hand away, and was instantly knocked down by the Shadowplay Ninja. The gauze that shot out from the Shadowplay Ninja's palm turned into a large net, firmly trapping the gray cat. The agility that Meow Meow was so proud of instantly lost. The Shadowplay Ninja glanced at the ink tool that had been thrown back, and a kunai spun at the tip of its finger. Then, with a fierce force, it pierced through Meow Meow's body. The Shadowplay Ninja was a 5-star magic fairy after all, and its basic attack power was as high as 2300. Meow Meow's defense was only 900, and its basic MP of 1500 had been greatly depleted after using 3 sure kill skills. Thus, it was killed on the spot by this furious blow. It could only be said that good and evil would eventually be repaid. It wasn't that it wasn't retribution, but that it wasn't time yet. Meow Meow had successively committed coin scattering, fraud, and theft, the 3 great evils, and it was finally time. Demon Meow heart suit, but on top of Meow Meow's grave, the Dream Demon who had regained consciousness due to the effects of Pride Eye, released an extremely joyous cry. It suddenly stretched out a tentacle that looked like a ribbon and grabbed the ink prop. Then, with a light pinch, it successfully activated. Because of the sure kill skill, Thief, the control of the ink tool had been transferred, and was actually equipped by the Dream Demon. Behind its back, a pair of pitch-black wings spread out. Dake Diming's brows twitched, and immediately picked up the Dream Demon's magic card. He discovered that the Dream Demon's MP and defense had both increased by 300. Card name, Dream Demon. Type, Sprite card. Level, Race, Undying Species. Attribute, Spectre type. Magic power, 2700 plus 300. Attack, 2500. Defense, 1600 plus 300. Sure kill skills. Gem of Terror, Pain Sharing, Same Life, Nightmare Realm. Without a doubt, that ink tool was obviously a type of equipment that could bestow a Spectre-type magic-conducting sprite with an additional flying ability. Equipped with Spectre Wings, the Shadowplay Ninja was like a tiger with wings, able to control the battlefield. But now, it's mine. Dake raised his head to look at his opponent. On the red side platform, Stuart Phone was still struggling to deal with it. He was still controlling the magic ball to avoid Sun Ibu's telekinesis attack. Dream Demon. Demon Meow. Attack. Demon Meow. After exchanging 2 sentences, the Dream Demon's Spectre Wings suddenly spread out, causing its originally fast speed to become even faster. It flew like the wind towards the red magic ball. At this moment, the round changed again. Tick-tock. The countdown for the 6th round began. But both contestants, the commentators and the audience, didn't have the time to pay attention to this round's card draw. In the sky, the Dream Demon, equipped with spectral wings, began to chase after the red magic conducting ball. On the ground, after losing Spectre Wings, the Shadowplay Ninja learned from the painful experience and turned around to pounce towards the blue magic ball that Fairy Ibu was holding. On the other side, Sun Ibu's magic power had already dropped to the freezing point. He was forced to stop using his telekinesis. He stood in place, desperately gasping for breath. The gem on his forehead had already lost its luster. At the same time, large, pitch-black, horned ants were crawling out of the shadow hole. On the commentary platform, Zach Wilson was giving an urgent commentary. It seems that Stuart Phone's shadow ant egg has already successfully hatched in the shadow hole. Under normal circumstances, the number of shadow ants that can be hatched from a shadow ant egg is directly proportional to the number of shadow holes. With 6 shadow holes, there should be 18 shadow ants that have successfully hatched. A meter-long, pitch-black giant ant crawled out of the shadow hole. Only 3 shadow ants that were closest to Sun Ibu approached it. The remaining 15 shadow ants that crawled out of the other 5 shadow holes surrounded Fairy Ibu. Fairy Ibu had already used up all of his moves and was helpless against the Shadowplay Ninja. With the addition of these 15 shadow ants, he was in an even more desperate situation. Me. He suddenly let out a hurried cry, and the ribbon wrapped around the blue magic ball was cut. The Shadowplay Ninja turned around again and gathered power to attack the magic ball. Whoosh! A black light flashed. The kunai's blade opened a long and narrow hole in the life barrier. Magic power, blue 8000, 5991. Seeing the magic ball's magic power plummet, the originally somewhat timid Fairy Ibu's eyes turned red. He mustered his courage and charged forward. But the Shadowplay Ninja suddenly reached out and grabbed his head with his palm, preventing him from moving forward. Without a sure kill skill, the difference between the 3 sizes of the 2 magic guide fairies became the deciding factor of victory. After grabbing Fairy Ibu's head, the Shadowplay Ninja didn't kill him. Instead, he raised his kunai and continued to stab at the magic ball. In the sky, the red magic ball's movement speed was much slower than the Dream Demon equipped with the spectral wings. Even though Stuart Phone did his best to summon his magic power, the nature of the magic ball determined the upper limit of its speed. In the end, he wasn't able to escape the Dream Demon's attack. Magic power, red 4065, 1667. Compared to the full value of 8,000 points, the red magic ball with only 1,667 points of magic power left could be said to be in dire straits. Stuart Phone's forehead was covered in sweat, his eyes were red, and his fingers were clenched tightly. It hadn't even been a minute since he ordered the Shadowplay Ninja to attack the blue magic ball, but his mentality had already changed completely. One more attack. As long as I take one more attack, I won't be able to reverse the situation. Stuart Phone didn't have the time to think about how the spectral wings had been taken away, nor did he have the time to think about how Dake had been able to summon such a powerful 5-star magic guide fairy like the Dream Demon in such a short time. He was covered in cold sweat, desperately looking for a chance to survive. Continuing to rely on magic power to control the magic ball to dodge would definitely not succeed. Should he struggle for a while longer and gamble on the outcome of the battle, and see whose magic ball's magic power would reach 0 first? The blue magic ball still had close to 6,000 points of magic power left. Moreover, the Dake Dimeng wouldn't allow the Shadow Play Ninja to continue attacking the blue magic ball. No. The Dake Dimeng had already begun to move. From the corner of Stuart Phone's eyes, he could already see the blue magic ball taking off again under the guidance of magic power. And without the spectral wings, the Shadow Play Ninja could only rely on throwing kunai to attack. That would be too stupid. Shadow Play Ninja, attack the purple ghost. With no other choice, Stuart Phone could only change the order. The Shadow Play Ninja's eyes flashed, and he immediately grabbed the hand that was about to throw the kunai at the purple ghost, the Dream Demon. And Stuart Phone himself was using all his strength to pull the red magic ball to the ground. In fact, the ground was his home ground. As long as the red magic ball was pulled to the ground, and any magic guide fairy could pull it into the shadow cave, he would have a chance to maneuver. And the 18 shadow ants on the ground were the 18 sacrificial offerings. These special magic guide fairies had the strength of a 2-star, but were marked as 1-star. They could be sacrificed to summon any 2nd rank or even 3rd rank magic guide fairies. Even the students of the same grade didn't know that Stuart Phone had a 7-star magic guide fairy card. Although that 7-star magic guide fairy card wasn't considered outstanding among his peers, it was still a 3rd rank magic guide fairy. It had a suppression effect on the 1st and 2nd ranks. This was the source of Stuart Phone's confidence. Even though he hadn't drawn that magic guide fairy card yet. But duelists wouldn't give up until the end. Boom! The kunai thrown by Shadow Play Ninja exploded in the air and forced back the Dream Demon that was charging at him. The red magic ball was affected by the shock wave of the explosion, and its magic power decreased, but it also fell to the ground at an even faster speed. Magic power, red 1667, 998. This unexpected surprise made Stuart Phone ecstatic, and he hurriedly gave the order. One of the shadow ants immediately turned and ran back to the shadow cave after receiving the order. The red magic ball that fell to the ground moved to the top of the shadow cave, under Stuart Phone's control. Once the shadow ant returned, it would be pulled into the shadow cave. However, Stuart Phone's grin suddenly froze. He suddenly raised his head to look at the other side. Dake was looking at him and smiling. Then, the red magic conducting ball began to rise with the push of magic power. It turned out that Dake had moved his own magic ball to a safe height, and then used his free hand to add magic power to the red magic ball. The tug of mana between the magic conducting balls was something that would happen in almost every duel between the seniors. Dake hooked his finger and continued to add magic power. Stuart Phone's eyes surged with anger, and he used his magic power to push it down. That red magic ball couldn't help but tremble under the control of the two people's magic power. What made Stuart Phone shocked and angry was that the magic power of this first-year student faintly showed the strength to suppress him. In his shock and anger, he fiercely clenched his teeth and roared, "Shadow Play Ninja!" The Shadow Play Ninja fiercely pulled Fairy Ibu up and threw her into the air, as if sticking to the ground. In an instant, it sped up and approached the red magic ball like the wind. At this crucial moment, it didn't have the urge to act again. Tick! The 6th round ended in the blink of an eye. The two sides didn't even touch their cards before they entered the 7th round. But at this moment, it was clear that they had entered a tug of war. The tens of thousands of spectators held their breaths and stared closely at the red magic ball. The 18 shadow ants that could be used as sacrifices were completely useless. Stuart Phone clearly had a 2nd-tier magic elven card in his hand, but he didn't have the slightest opportunity to use the sacrificial summoning spell. The situation had unknowingly become so anxious. And after the 7th round began, the two contestants still didn't touch their cards. Stuart Phone poured all of his mental energy into controlling the magic conducting ball. As long as he could hold on until the Shadow Play Ninja arrived, he could directly press his hand on the magic ball. Using the magic remote control method wouldn't be able to resist the power of the Shadow Play Ninja. When the time came, he could let the Shadow Play Ninja put the magic ball into the shadow hole and get some breathing room. But Stuart Phone had the Shadow Play Ninja, and Dake Dimming also had the Dream Demon. Even without Dake's command, the Dream Demon had already begun to move. It swooped down from the sky, attacking the red magic ball like an eagle. With only 998 points of MP remaining, it only needed one strike to completely shatter it. If it could smoothly obtain victory in this duel, it believed that it would definitely receive even more adoration. At the same time, the fog in the blue summoning area had already dispersed. Kettle's vision was restored, and it drilled its head out from its shell. Its bean-sized eyes swiveled around, looking at the intense battle in the red area. It couldn't help but be eager to give it a try. But its extremely slow crawling speed made it unable to crawl to the battlefield. The Dream Demon was too tactless. It actually didn't activate the Nightmare Realm for this Kettle. BZZT BZZT BZZT. Kettle was somewhat depressed. No one noticed the lonely little Kettle. When the Dream Demon swooped down, the eyes of the Shadow Play Ninja flickered with a sharp glint. Its right hand's fingers were already clamping 3 kunai. It stuck close to the ground as it sprinted, and without a hair's breadth, it tossed the 3 kunai upwards. The kunai separated in the air, and the thin veil attached to the end of the kunai was pulled apart, forming a net. This net of shadow energy gradually turned into a large net, and from bottom to top, it ferociously enveloped the Dream Demon. Demonic Mimi. The Dream Demon didn't have time to turn around, and immediately screamed. But after screaming, it didn't retreat, and instead continued to charge forward, attempting to crash into the red magic ball along with the shadow net. But what caught it off guard was that the 3 kunai that acted as the fulcrum suddenly exploded, and the resulting impact wrapped around the shadow net, blocking it in the air. The Shadow Play Ninja lightly exhaled, and its 5 fingers moved quickly as if it was controlling a puppet. The shadow net suddenly tightened, trapping the Dream Demon's entire body. The Dream Demon's eyes revealed panic. Originally, with its ghost nature, it could easily drill out of the net. But after equipping the ghost wings, it lost the ability to penetrate. This made it look like a little bird trapped in a net, and was extremely pitiful. But it wasn't a little bird. Tear. Dake couldn't help but remind it. Only then did the Dream Demon come back to its senses, and gather its power to tear apart the shadow net. It originally had this ability, but because of its high intelligence, it fell into a panic. But as soon as Dake opened its mouth to speak, it was as if air leaked out of it, and its control over magic immediately decreased, giving Stuart Phone an opportunity. The Shadow Play Ninja finally arrived and grabbed the magic ball. Looks like contestant Stuart Phone has successfully extended his life. Zach Wilson on the commentary platform humorously said. But the situation that was about to relax in his eyes was still in full swing. Angus Jeffrey in the ring. Also in the ring were Anna, Luo C, and the others. Yalvet, who was in the audience. Aurora in the box. Different people were all tensed up for reasons they couldn't do. The situation on the field didn't relax. Dream Demon, Dread Gem. Dake Diming's voice clearly rose. Although the Dream Demon was a bit reluctant, it still obeyed the order, and released the magic that it had gathered night after night from the Dream Realm. The 3 red gems embedded in its body released the light of magic power that shone like gems. The light was extremely dazzling. It had a dreamlike beauty. But hidden beneath the beauty was a deadly murderous intent. A few shadow ants that were touched by the magic light seemed to melt, and turned into magic light on the spot. The Shadow Play Ninja felt the danger, and subconsciously grabbed the magic ball in its hand behind its back, and was instantly shown by the magic light. At that moment, it suddenly felt an extreme fear in its heart. It was different from ordinary magic guiding fairies. Stuart Phone's Shadow Play Ninja clearly had a higher intelligence than ordinary magic-guiding fairies. It was also because of this that he was able to sense the fear hidden in the magical light even more deeply. Its magic value was rapidly decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye. After being summoned, the Shadow Play Ninja had been continuously using its sure kill skill, Shadow Play, and its magic had already been depleted by half. After being shown by the magic light, the Shadow Play Ninja, that only had 1,000 magic points left, couldn't withstand it at all, and it was about to hit the bottom. At that moment, as the duelist, Stuart Phone finally summoned another magic guiding card. From the moment the Shadow Play Ninja received the magic ball until now, it had only been a few seconds. Stuart Phone was very clear that he didn't have the time to sacrifice summon, so he used a normal summoning spell. In the name of Stuart Phone, Magic Guiding Summon, Protective Mirror. In an instant, an oval-shaped mirror of light appeared in front of the Shadow Play Ninja, blocking the magic light of the Dread Gem. But this magic spell that could protect at a critical moment only lasted for a few seconds before it suddenly shattered. However, in just a few short seconds, Yi Zichen was stunned. The Shadow Play Ninja, that only had a sliver of HP left, successfully entered the Shadow Cave beside its feet, and completed the shadow escape. Stuart Phone suddenly heaved a sigh of relief, and his tense nerves instantly relaxed. But the magic light released by the Dread Gem didn't stop. The Dream Demon's face was full of regret as it used its sure kill skill. With the momentum of wanting to use up all of its stored magic power, it slightly condensed the magic light and poured it into the Shadow Cave that the Shadow Play Ninja used to escape. Ah! A scream of despair came from the Shadow Cave's entrance. The shadow net that was left on the Dream Demon's body suddenly turned into small fragments of light. There was no more sound under the Shadow Cave. Without the Shadow Play Ninja, the red magic ball that was brought into the Shadow Cave was squeezed out by the Shadow Cave. The red magic ball that appeared in front of the audience again had its life barrier completely shattered. Magic power, red 998-0, tick. The countdown in the air restarted after it reached 0. But this high-intensity duel that didn't leave any room for breathing came to an end. At the beginning of the 6th round, both sides had no energy to touch or look at the cards. From the battle between the sky and the ground, to the magic power confrontation between the contestants, to the rescue and defense of the magic fairy, it was so intense that it made people unable to breathe. In the end, the red team contestant, Stuart Phone, wasn't able to drag the situation to the next stage. The blue team contestant, Dake Dim-eng, seized the opportunity to pursue him and beat him to death. After a short pause, the atmosphere in the duel arena suddenly became intense. The audience that came from all over the world was like boiling water in an instant. Countless voices of discussion mixed with the excited cheers, rolling up and down like a tidal wave. Today, the audience that saw Dake Dim-eng for the first time probably wouldn't have thought that a first-year student could actually defeat a third-year student in an official duel. Many of the audience were very optimistic about the contestant, Stuart Phone. They didn't think that he would actually lose. Some of the people that bet on Stuart Phone had a look of disbelief. It's gone just like that? Doesn't Phone still have a lot of magic cards? What's going on with him? What's going on with him? The face of the president of the Aristocratic History Research Society, Angus Jeffrey, was almost distorted. He took advantage of the sound waves to roar at Mike Owen, who was beside him. But Mike Owen only wanted to tell him, "Your spit is on my face." The duel has ended. The final victor is the first-year Aristocratic Academy, Dake Dim-eng. Zach Wilson couldn't help but shout excitedly. On the red team's platform, Stuart Phone, who only came back to his senses when Wilson's voice sounded, suddenly realized that he had really lost. He clearly still had a trump card in his hand. He clearly had prepared enough sacrifices to summon a large number of high-star magic fairies. He clearly still had a 7-star magic fairy as his final trump card. But he still lost. He had only cast the sacrificial summoning spell for less than 10 seconds, but he couldn't squeeze it out. Suddenly, he inhaled a large amount of air in his throat, causing him to choke. Then, he couldn't stop coughing. If I could compress the casting time of the sacrificial summoning spell to the limit of 3 seconds, Some of the powerhouses in the upper grades could cast the sacrificial summoning spell in the limit of 3 seconds, just like the normal summoning spell. But in fact, that was the result of both talent and hard work. Stuart Phone could be said to be a hard-working genius, and his luck was also not bad. But his magic talent was actually not particularly top-notch. Therefore, when he mastered the sacrificial summoning spell, which was much more profound than the normal summoning spell, his progress was very slow. "Senior Phone, are you okay?" Dake Diming's voice, which was as gentle as the spring breeze, entered his ears, causing Stuart Phone's thoughts to suddenly stagnate. A strange expression flashed across his face. He coughed hard twice to stop the itch in his throat. Then, he raised his head slightly and said in a deep voice, "I lost. 4 in 1, 8,000 plus. A new week, please count the votes." Chapter 396. A win was a win, and a loss was a loss. Stuart Phone wasn't at the point where he couldn't afford to lose. But in a duel, there was an element of luck. Winning or losing wasn't a display of one's full strength. He had already admitted that Dake Diming surpassed the first years, but he might not necessarily lose the next match. "I hope I can still meet you in the next match." Stuart Phone left this sentence, then lowered his head and closed the card table. In the following time, he needed to think carefully about how to deal with President Jeffrey's censure. An unexpected failure might have an extremely negative impact on his position in the Aristocratic Society Research Society. Next match? Dake had a strange expression after hearing Stuart's last sentence. Website: https://m. Vipkanchu. VIP. He felt that this senior's words had a hint of "every dog has its day, don't bully the young for being poor." But the one with a higher grade should be you, senior, right? He rubbed his chin and hesitated for a while. He was too lazy to respond, so he started to recall his magic fairy. The magic fairy's performance couldn't go unnoticed in this duel's victory. Especially the Sun Elf and the Dream Demon, they could be considered to have established the situation. Stuart Phone probably thought that as long as he could drag out this round, he could regain his chance of victory. But in reality, when the Dream Demon stepped onto the battlefield, the duel had already ended. The only reason he had the illusion that he could still live was because Dake had chosen to hold back and didn't let the Dream Demon activate the Nightmare Realm. Once the Nightmare Realm was activated, the Dream Demon would only need to use the venue swap to switch positions with the Shadowplay Ninja to deal a fatal blow to the Magic Ball. But in a duel, the less information leaked out, the more advantageous it would be for the later matches. Like Sun Elf's Magic Mirror and the Magician Secretary's Automatic Summon, after this duel, would most likely be seen through and targeted. So learning to hold back a trump card was very important. When Dake put away his magic cards and walked down the stage, eldest Prince Charles, who had come especially for him, was already somewhat impatient. Although the viewing experience of the duel just now was passable, his mind wasn't on the duel itself. "Where's the brave cat we agreed on?" The first prince's voice was intimidating. His confidant beside him hurriedly echoed, "Next round, the next round will definitely come out." The first prince crossed his arms in front of his chest and continued to watch the arena in silence. Of course, he knew that it was normal for him to be unable to summon a specific magic-conducting spirit in a duel. He was just venting his dissatisfaction. But the next duel... Of course, the next duel was not Dake's home ground. Under Senior Sister Judy's greeting, he walked on the stage and left the stage. Then, the two seniors stepped onto the stage and began their duel. The two contestants in the first round of the upper grade semifinals were the fourth-year aristocratic student who had defeated the fifth-year contestant and the only sixth-year contestant. Dake didn't head to the ring after exiting the arena. Instead, he stood at the entrance of the contestants' tunnel, replenishing his magic cards while watching the battle. The other contestants who hadn't participated were also in the same tunnel. The remaining two contestants in the upper grade group, Dragon Slayer Luke Beige and Knight Baron Noah Sharp, were in the same grade. The two were obviously familiar with each other, but they didn't seem to get along and stood apart. But of course, one uses dragons, and the other slays dragons, couldn't possibly be together. The atmosphere in the lower grade group was slightly more harmonious. Dake could be considered to be acquainted with senior sister Mary and could at least exchange a few words with her. As for the other third-year student, Tom Nixon from the House of Fools, he kept his head down and didn't speak much. In such an atmosphere, the duel began. Although the outcome of the upper grade duel had nothing to do with him, Dake still watched it very seriously. However, the difference in strength between the two contestants in this duel was huge. From the beginning of the battle phase, the situation had sunk into a one-sided state. As a fourth-year aristocratic student, he was unable to defeat a senior like Dake Dimming. From beginning to end, he was completely suppressed by the sixth-year student. It was as if by the time he came to his senses, the fourth-year aristocratic student was already gone. I didn't expect it to be my turn so soon. Mary Bond inhaled slightly, her back against the wall straightening slightly. Dake asked with concern, "Senior, do you have a chance of winning?" Mary glanced at Tom Nixon opposite her and then waved her fist. "If you want to talk about a chance of winning, Dake, Mary broke into a smile. "Of course not." Then she turned around and walked out of the contestants' passage. Dake opened his mouth and couldn't say anything for a long time. "She's really carefree." Dake shook his head and restrained his thoughts. Although senior sister Mary had defeated Elsie Kevin in the previous duel, if one observed the match carefully, they would find that her strength was actually slightly inferior to Elsie Kevin's. Her victory was the result of a combination of many factors. But in the face of Tom Nixon, an honor student in the third grade, her advantages were unlikely to be displayed. Just as she said, there was no chance of winning. But duelists never said defeat. Even if there was no road ahead, they had to believe in themselves, believe in miracles, and eventually open up the light. Although this statement seemed a bit chinibu, the power of the heart could indeed create miracles. And the opponent could suddenly make a stupid mistake, right? Dake smiled slightly and turned to look at the other contestant who was about to go on stage. His eyes just happened to meet Tom Nixon's eyes. Tom Nixon was a third-year student, which meant he was 14 years old. In this world, 14 years old was the age when one could get married and have children, and shoulder the responsibility of a family. Although the rapid changes in the era gave children more time to grow up, Tom was a child of the slums and was more aware of the ups and downs of society. This was the first time Dake had come into contact with his senior from the House of Fools, so he couldn't help but observe him carefully. From his face, Tom's hair was slightly split, and his bangs were too long to cover his eyes. He had a very low-key appearance, but he didn't have the gloominess of Stuart Phone. He looked very natural and ordinary, like a teenager that could be seen everywhere. But it was this teenager who defeated the descendant of the Sage of Winter, Sister Winnie Scatty, in the previous duel. From the beginning, Dake treated Winnie Scatty as an opponent that he had to overcome on his way to victory, but he didn't expect her to be eliminated in the first round of the competition. Tom Nixon, who had defeated Winnie Scully, naturally attracted his attention. Just as the two were sizing each other up, Tom Nixon suddenly raised his hand and opened his 5 fingers to Dake. Then, he slightly closed his hand so that his thumb was under his index finger. Before Dake could express his doubts, he quickly turned around and walked out of the tunnel. "What does that mean?" Dake recalled Tom Nixon's hand gesture and was confused. However, the Evernight Baron Noah Sharp suddenly asked, "You know him?" "Me and him." Dake looked at Tom Nixon's back and shook his head. "No. That's strange." Noah Sharp rubbed his chin and pondered. This fifth-year knight was only 16 years old, but he was quite tall. Although he looked ordinary, he gave off a very steady and reliable feeling. Dake didn't know him. He only knew from the previous introduction that he saved his home and received the title of Baron. But since Noah Sharp took the initiative to talk to him, he had no reason to keep it. He asked, "Excuse me, what does Tom Nixon's hand gesture mean?" "That's a custom of some tribes." Dragon Slayer, Luke Beck, who had been silent all this while, suddenly opened his mouth and explained, "Tom is telling you that he will eat you." "Eat me?" Dake was even more confused. Noah Sharp glanced at him and said, "That's why I asked you if you know him. This isn't a normal greeting. He's treating you like prey." Dake was confused. Seeing that his junior was shocked, Noah Sharp laughed and comforted him. "Don't think too much. You're really good to be able to defeat 2 third-year students in a row. Even if you lose, you'll gain a lot of popularity. In Shangmalian, popularity can be converted into credits. You need to work hard." After that, Noah Sharp walked out of the tunnel and prepared to watch the battle. He didn't treat Dake too warmly because of his status. In fact, this was the general attitude of a magus with a bright future towards nobles. Although Noah Sharp had the title of Baron, he didn't care about the noble system. Then, the dragon slayer Luke Beige also walked out of the tunnel. Only Dark was left in the tunnel, deep in thought. But since he couldn't figure it out, Dake could only put away his thoughts and watch the battle seriously. Zach Wilson, who had returned to the commentary platform, had already begun his impassioned commentary. After exchanging commentary with the seniors, he returned to Angus Jeffrey's side. He stole a glance at Jeffrey's angry expression and felt inexplicably happy. Of course, he couldn't smile in front of Jeffrey. Now that he returned to the commentary platform, he could be bold and decisive again. On paper, there was a slight difference in strength between Mary Bond and Tom Nixon. However, after experiencing Dake Diming's victory, the audience was more enthusiastic about this kind of duel between juniors and seniors. Moreover, the duel styles of the two contestants were quite unique, and they had indeed accumulated a small number of fans. Therefore, the atmosphere at the beginning of the duel was quite good. When the two contestants stepped onto the platform, they skipped the trash talk and entered the preparation stage. Then, they shuffled the cards, drew the cards, summoned the cards, and the duel began. The winner of these two will be Dake's opponent in the finals? In the ring, Deanna asked with her eyes wide open. Panduola nodded with a smile. That's right. If Dake wants to get the final advantage, he must defeat the winner of these two. Deanna couldn't help but say, "It looks so difficult." The duel between Mary Bond and Tom Nixon was unexpectedly fierce. Or rather, Mary Bond was unexpectedly strong. In this duel, she strongly displayed the qualities that a spirit magus should have. Her magic guide sprite wasn't as intelligent as Dake, but its performance was extremely close. "Deanna, she looks so similar to you." Luo Si was also surprised. However, Deanna had a puzzled look. How so?" Luo Si shook his head. "I can't say for sure." Panduola stared at Deanna's face for a while and said, "Watch the duel carefully, it will be beneficial for you." Deanna. Oh. She really has good qualities. On the other side of the ring, Lia Goethe, who had changed her appearance, showed a look of approval. But it was not Mary Bond that caught her eye. It was Tom Nixon. While Mary Bond displayed the aptitude of a mind archmage, Tom Nixon displayed another kind of aptitude that only a few people could see. It was the quality of a blood magus, which was very different from a spirit magus. Exploring the origin of the bloodline, building a blood connection with a magic guide sprite, filling the core of the magic guide sprite with the instinct of the bloodline, and exerting unimaginable power. This was a blood magus. Different from the system of spirit power, a blood magus used blood power. It didn't matter which one was stronger or weaker. However, spirit power was actually a system that could be popularized in a sense. And blood power was the monopoly of a very small number of people. The mixed blood Tom Nixon seemed to have the key to opening the door of blood power. In the duel arena, the battle between Mary Bond and Tom Nixon's magic guide sprite gradually broke away from the framework of the usual battle. It was like a warrior who was proficient in martial arts and a beast who was bloodthirsty by nature fighting to the death. The data on the interface seemed to have become irrelevant embellishments to them. From the beginning, Mary Bond, who knew that she had no chance of winning, fully enjoyed the pleasure of the duel. And Tom Nixon, who had victory in his grasp, gradually calmed down after encountering unexpected fierce resistance. The beast in his heart under his ordinary appearance slowly revealed its fangs. The intensity of the battle caused a frenzy. Dake Diming's gaze was focused, and he was completely focused. The duel between the two people in the arena completely attracted his attention, making his blood, which had cooled down not long ago, boil again. As for the gesture that Tom Nixon made to him before the match, he had long forgotten about it. It was meaningless to dwell on that kind of thing. Next, if Tom Nixon wins, then he would defeat him in the finals. That would be enough. 4,000/. I'm not feeling well. I'll hold on and finish the guarantee. Leave today's additional chapters until tomorrow. Chapter 397. Bang! As the magic ball's life enchantment suddenly shattered, the audience was in an uproar. Zach Wilson picked up the microphone and said passionately, "Although it's a pity, the winner of this duel is still the third year of the Academy of Fools, Tom Nixon." I still lost. Mary Bond wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked up at the sky slightly. The sun was shining brightly and made her eyes look slightly yellow. Nice. Although she had lost, she still felt a sense of satisfaction from this duel. It seemed like she could leave some good memories for this year's Easter. Remember the URL. VIP Kanchu. 6 on the other side. After Tom Nixon finally won, he was slightly relieved and subconsciously turned his head to look at the castle. The opponent's unexpected difficulty made him feel a lot more alert. It also made him more vigilant. The Shang Malian Academy's rich teaching resources made the students improve every moment. He couldn't let his guard down just because of his opponent's grade. After defeating Winnie Scardy, he was indeed a bit overconfident. But fortunately, he was alert early, so it wasn't too late to calm down. There was still a threshold to be crossed in the next finals. Thinking of this, Tom Nixon slowly retracted his gaze from the castle and turned to the contestant passage. He showed his white teeth to his opponent in the finals. Easter Duel Festival. Model Easter Egg. Entry card. These things seemed to be planned by the first-year student. According to the first-year student's plan, as long as he won all the way, not only would he gain popularity, but he would also be able to get the entry card as one of the prizes. His idea was obviously good. Unfortunately, thank you for the entry card. As the second round of the lower grade competition officially ended, the two upper grade contestants walked out of the contestant passage. The atmosphere between Evernight Baron Noah Sharp and Dragon Slayer Luke Beige suddenly became very tense. It was obvious that this was not the first time the two of them had fought. Some busybodies even called this battle the Battle of Destiny, and announced it to the public. Of course, the fated battle between the two had been fought so many times that their fans almost didn't feel it. After the two of them left, Mary Bond and Tom Nixon returned to the tunnel one after another. Mary arrived first. She waved at Dake and said, "Good luck." Then, she continued walking deeper into the tunnel. Then Tom Nixon entered the passageway and stood against the wall directly opposite Dake. Dake wanted to ask about the reason for his gesture, but when he saw Tom Nick close his eyes and meditate after he came in, he didn't bother to ask. When the second duel of the second round began, the atmosphere in the contestant passageway wasn't very good. But as the duel unfolded, both of them were gradually attracted to the duel and no longer paid attention to each other. The result of the duel was Evernight Baron going against the momentum and killing Dragon Slayer. The senior commentator shouted excitedly. The audience cheered excitedly as usual. Also, after Evernight Baron went up on the stage and ridiculed Dragon Slayer during the interview with Judy, it caused a huge reaction. As a result, the atmosphere in the entire stadium was raised to a critical point. It was also at this time that the finals of the Easter Duel Festival officially began. After the interview, Evernight Baron came down from the stage and left. Dake Dimming and Tom Nixon, who brushed past him, went up on the stage. Now, let's meet the two finalists of the Easter Duel Festival's junior category. Judy led Dake and Tom to the middle of the stage and introduced them again. Probably because the previous duel between the two was exciting enough, the audience's response was very good. Judy took advantage of the strong atmosphere and pulled Tom Nixon to her side. She asked loudly, "Nixon, how about it? Aren't you going to respond to your fans? Tell me loudly, do you have the confidence to win the championship?" Tom was stunned by the sudden passion. He helplessly held the microphone and forced out a sentence. "Of course." In short, it was quite awkward. Dake was laughing when he suddenly saw Judy turn her head. He immediately became serious, as if he was facing a great enemy. As expected, after Judy got Tom's answer, she immediately pulled Dake over and asked loudly, "Then, Dimming, what about you?" Dake coughed and looked at the densely packed audience. He could only suppress his embarrassment and reply, "I'll do my best." Dake wasn't a person who liked to brag, so he wouldn't be so sure of his words. However, the meaning behind his words was very clear. The positive answers of the two finalists made the audience members who supported them excited. Judy knew when to stop. She immediately turned around and said, Dake Dimming was able to fight his way out of the qualifiers as a first-year student, which is already very impressive. After that, he won against two third-year students and advanced to the finals. His strength is not something that can be measured by his grade. As for Tom Nixon, who also entered the finals, since he was able to defeat the popular Winnie Scardy, he must have a dual level that surpasses the average third-year student. In the following finals, would it be Tom Nixon who would stand tall and defend the dignity of the third years, or would it be Doc Diamond who would become the biggest dark horse in this Easter festival? Let's wait and see. Amidst the audience's excited cheers, Dake and Tom walked off the stage and went to the red and blue player stands respectively. Dake won first, red. Tom won later, blue. After entering the main competition, Dake had been on the blue player stand for 2 consecutive rounds. This time, he could finally enjoy the scenery in a different place, so he was in a good mood. As he stepped onto the player stand, the cheers outside the arena became louder. However, because it was too noisy, he couldn't tell if the audience was cheering for him or for Tom, or it was just a simple hoot. Well, the latter was more likely. After all, it was his first time here, so he wasn't that popular. Tom Nixon's popularity didn't seem to be very good either. The reason why people were so enthusiastic was probably purely because they were looking forward to the excitement of the finals, and not because they were supporting the two people participating in the finals. But that was just the current situation. In the future, there would always be something. Dake looked around the audience, then turned back, pressed his hand on the card table, and injected magic. Start. On the blue player stand, Tom Nixon was slightly silent in the face of the unexpectedly enthusiastic audience. He actually didn't have many opportunities to stand on such a stage. Because the nature of this Easter festival was more of an entertainment competition, and the competition was relatively short, and it was divided into 2 groups, high and low, it gave him such an opportunity. Of course, his own strength was also an important factor. In the second semester of the third year, he had indeed improved a lot. But now, in the face of the support of so many audience members, there was suddenly something in his heart that he didn't quite understand. As he turned around, Tom Nixon raised his hands and inserted his fingers into his thick bangs. Then, he pushed them back, revealing his smooth forehead. Then his eyes focused, and he pressed on the card table, injecting magic. The time to hunt has arrived. Is it finally going to start? Freedom City, in the private room of the Shang-Molian Dueling Hall. City Lord Montefiore took a sip of tea and leaned lazily and casually against the back of the chair. From watching the competition in the morning until now, City Lord Montefiore no longer had any doubts about Dake Dimming's excellence. It was just that Dake's magic elf had brought her too many surprises, so much so that she began to worry about whether Dake was good or not. And she also carefully discovered that her daughter's emotions seemed to be a little unstable. But Aurora and she were not thinking the same thing. Dake Dimming was too good, making this girl, who had long been prepared to be raised into a good-for-nothing, suddenly lose her goal. On the other side, Principal Aerti, who was enjoying the delicious pastries, was very interested in the changes in the mother and daughter pair. Elisha, do you think Dake will win? Kingdom's capital, in the audience of the Shang-Molian Dueling Hall. After temporarily putting those unnecessary worries to the back of her mind, Yvette became nervous again. She hoped that her son would win without any suspense, just like in every previous duel. But this time, Dake's opponent was slightly different from before. Tom Nixon had shown too many things in his duel with Mary Bond. This made her feel worried. First, Princess Elisha glanced at the Valkyrie, who was as reliable as a mountain on the battlefield, and couldn't help but frown. Your Grace, I actually don't think this is important. Yvette immediately denied it. No, this is very important. The Grand Princess opened her mouth, but knew that it was useless to refute, so she simply gave up on reasoning. Like first Prince Charles, she didn't come for the duel. She simply wanted to confirm the so-called hero and holy sword. This was related to the deployment of their future strategy. Is his name Tom Nixon? He looks like someone with great potential. On the other hand, eldest Prince Charles suddenly observed Tom with great interest. He tilted his head slightly and said to his confidant, "What do you think? Do you think he can force out those two magic elves with the potential of a hero?" His trusted aide sighed in his heart and said earnestly, "Your Highness, I feel that this only depends on whether or not Dark Diamond can draw it. If he draws it, it's impossible for him not to use it, right?" The first prince rubbed his chin and said, "I thought about it carefully. According to your description, I might have seen that white cat a few months ago." Confidant. The first prince whispered, "If it's the one with the potential of a hero, then the severity of the situation may be greater than expected. Perhaps you should prepare in advance. We need to go to the Vatican tonight." Compared to the foreign audience with a purpose, the first years were more pure. Located in the ring. Not only were Anna and Luo C cheering hard, but the rest of the cheerleading team led by Doran had already been established. Dark defeated the third years again and again, causing the faces of those in the same grade to shine. They were all rather excited. Of course, there were also people who didn't want Dake to continue winning. For example, the president of the Aristocratic History Research Society, Angus Jeffrey, gritted his teeth and cheered for Tom. At this moment, he was just doing things based on his own likes and dislikes. The atmosphere of a duel could easily expose one's true nature. After Dake Dimming started the card table on the player platform, he looked at Tom Nixon and suddenly said, "Do you really want to win?" After hearing this, Tom Nixon couldn't help but narrow his eyes. However, he still responded, "What do you think?" Dake observed carefully and confirmed, "It seems like you really want to win." Tom shrugged and said in a strange tone, "And then? If I really want to win, will you admit defeat on the spot?" Dake smiled slightly, "What do you think?" Tom snorted slightly, "If that's the case, what's the point of asking these questions?" Dake shook his head, "I just want to know how determined you are." Tom suddenly laughed, "Since you want to know so much, I'll tell you, my determination is 100%. Dake nodded slightly, "What a coincidence." Players, please put your cards into the card slots. The cards will be shuffled automatically. The referee's voice suddenly rang out, interrupting the conversation between the two. Dake put the adjusted cards into the card slots and waited for the cards to be shuffled automatically. Tom on the blue player platform did the same. The commentator, Zach Wilson, who had given the time to speak to the two contestants, smiled and said into the microphone, "It seems that the atmosphere between the two sides is very good. We might be able to usher in the most exciting duel of the day. In short, as a member of the audience, I can't wait. What about you?" He pointed the microphone at the audience like a singer in a concert, but it seemed that not many of the audience gave him face. Zach Wilson coughed awkwardly and quickly skipped this part, continuing, "As everyone knows, the two winners of this year's Easter Duel Festival will receive a super large Easter egg prepared by the Academy. In addition to the few public rewards, there are many more hidden surprises. Just like the souvenir Easter eggs sold on the spot, you never know what is hidden inside until you open it. I wonder if any of you have tried your luck? I heard that a model of a sky-white dragon has already been drawn. Just like fate, the first one to draw it was actually its owner." Zach Wilson revealed the news in order to divert the awkwardness, which finally aroused the audience's reaction, and the reaction was indescribably intense. But it seemed to lack some relation to the current duel. Beep! The referee's whistle finally drew the audience's attention back to the duel arena. This duel had finally entered the preparation stage. Preparation stage, 30s. In the air above the duel arena, a countdown that made people unable to help but pinch their toes appeared. The audience instantly tensed up. On the other hand, the two contestants on the arena became incomparably calm. On the red arena, Dake had already pressed his hand on the shuffled cards before the countdown appeared. When the whistle sounded and the countdown appeared, he immediately took out 5 cards at an extremely fast speed and unfolded them in his left hand. His thoughts instantly turned to the duel mode. Scabbard, weapon form, meow meow, silence potion, bliss 3, trash slime, let's go Scabbard. The moment he saw the first magic card, Dake couldn't help but smirk. Because Scabbard was a second-tier magic elf, he would transform it into a weapon form before the competition to make it easier to summon. The Scabbard in weapon form only needed to be sprite transformed to change back to its original form, and the time consumed was completely negligible. Of course, the most important thing was that it didn't need a sacrifice. It could be said that each of Dake's magic elves had their own functions, and it would be a pity if they were sacrificed before they could be used. No matter what. With Scabbard in hand, it meant that the first piece of the puzzle to victory was in hand. Dake didn't hesitate and directly pulled out the card from his hand. Tom Nixon wasn't an opponent that he could hide his hand. If he could kill him in a few rounds, then he wouldn't hesitate. As for the other 4 magic cards, Meow Meow could be summoned after Scabbard was summoned. Trash Slime didn't have a summoning environment. The other 2 cards could be looked at later. In reality, there weren't many decisions to be made in these 30 seconds, and Dake almost immediately made a decision. After he pulled out Scabbard, he even had time to raise his head and observe Tom Nixon. Tom Nixon obviously felt his gaze, and after half a second, he immediately raised his head and grinned at Dake, and the smile on his face gradually widened. 3s, 2s, 1s, 0s, battle stage, 30s. In the name of Dake Dimming, magic summoning. In the name of Tom Nixon, magic summoning. There seemed to be a flash of lightning where their gazes collided. The moment battle stage began, they raised the magic cards in their hands almost at the same time, and then instantly summoned. In an instant, the 2 magic cards emitted a strong light at the same time. The fluctuation of magic emerged. The white light emitted from the surface of the magic card instantly shone on both the red and blue summoning areas. 2 magic elves quickly appeared in the light at the same time. The audience's gaze fell on the entrance. Immediately, someone exclaimed, "Why is it this magic card?" In the first round, Dake Dimeng summoned a sword in his summoning area. Although this sword had shown very strong power in the previous duel, it was after all just a sword. More of the audience thought that the one who controlled it to chase after the magic ball was the white cat. A small number of the audience thought that this might be a magic sword that could be controlled with magic. Only a very small number of the audience realized that it was actually a magic elven. But even so, no one would have thought that it was not only a magic elven, but also a second-tier gold magic elven. The power of the single Scabbard was not shown much in this duel festival. However, with the appearance of the single Scabbard, eldest Prince Charles's confidant immediately informed him, "It's this sword. Our people have analyzed the characteristics of the holy sword from this sword." The holy sword? It's finally here. The eldest prince immediately perked up and paid full attention to the single Scabbard. Then he questioned, "Even if it's a holy sword, what's the use of summoning a holy sword out of thin air?" His confidant was about to answer when the situation on the stage suddenly changed. In the blue team's summoning area, the magic elf that Tom Nixon summoned with his hand was finally revealed. It was a magic elven that had appeared in the previous duel with Mary Bond. So the audience was not unfamiliar with it. And Dake immediately recognized it. But after recognizing it, his heart sank. Because this magic elven was very strong, completely different from the popular 3-star peak, Troll, it should be a magic elven unique to Tom Nixon. Or it could be said that it was very rare, so rare that there were few records of it in the data. How unfortunate! After completing the first summoning, Tom Nixon squeezed out a sentence from his mouth with a mocking expression. Obviously, he was full of confidence in his magic elven. The magic elven that appeared in the blue team summoning area was shockingly a human-shaped poisonous snake. The poisonous snake's body was as thick as the mouth of a bowl, and it had 4 limbs. When it stood upright, it was about 1.5 or 1.6 meters long, but if the tail dragged on the ground was included, it should be more than 2 meters long. Its body was covered in extremely dense snake scales, and the edges of each snake scale had the color of blood, making the color of its body look very bright. And its 4 limbs were similar to a snake's body. Its legs were thick and strong, and its arms were slender and flexible, able to bend at will. The claws of its 4 limbs were like the claws of an eagle, and its nails were very long, like blades. It stood there, its body leaning forward, its eyes long and slender, its snake tongue flicking, and 2 pairs of extremely obvious fangs in its mouth, giving the impression that it was very sinister and vicious. Card name, Bloodthirsty Serpent. Type, Elven card. Level, *****. Race, Fiend. Attribute, Evil. Magic, 1100. Attack, 1700. Defense, 800. Ultimate skill, Bloodthirst, Blood Serpent Venom. As a fiend, it was not of the dark element. This bloodthirsty serpent attribute was of the pure evil element. While it countered the ghost element and the super element, it was also countered by the bug element, the fighting element, and the fairy element. However, in the duel with Mary Bond, who specialized in fighting, this bloodthirsty serpent man completely disregarded the restraints of this attribute and displayed absolute evil. It was because he had seen how powerful it was that Dake was wary of it. This bloodthirsty serpent had been around ever since it was summoned in the duel with Mary Bond, and it kept on sucking blood to become stronger. In the end, it even obtained the strength of a 3rd-tier magic elven. For this type of magic elven that kept on getting stronger, it must be killed in the cradle before it matured. Fortunately, the single scabbard without flesh and blood was the nemesis of this type of magic elven. Dake made up his mind and immediately injected magic into the single scabbardous magic card. He shouted, "Single scabbard, elven form." At this moment, it did not matter whether it was exposed or not. A powerful enough magic card was not afraid of being targeted. With the injection of a large amount of magic, the single scabbard weapon form immediately began to transform into single scabbard, elven form. It wasn't until he said it out loud that Zach Wilson, the commentator, exclaimed, "Unbelievable! That mysterious sword is actually a magic elf." His exclamation was a little exaggerated, but it was a true portrayal of the audience's thoughts. Clang! In the process of elven form, the single eye on the sword hilt suddenly opened. The ribbon at the end of the sword hilt suddenly expanded, forming a ribbon hand with fingers. Then, it suddenly pulled itself out of the scabbard and shot out like lightning. Card name, Single Scabbard. Type, Elven card. Level, ******. Race, Undying species. Attribute, Steel/Spectre. Magic power, 1500. Attack, 2200. Defense, 1800. Ultimate skill, Weapon form, Combo/, Sword dance, Holy sword. There was no need for any magic elven to wield the sword. This 4-star magic elven had a super high attack value of 200 points that exceeded the 4-star peak, and it was enough to kill any 3-star magic elven. Although the bloodthirsty serpent also had a super high attack value of 200 points that exceeded the 3-star peak, it was still only a 3-star. The difference in attack power between the two was a whole 500 points. Once they clashed, the result was completely predictable. However, when the single scabbard passed through the field like lightning, Tom Nixon shouted, "Accept the challenge." Then, as a magus, he immediately began to summon the second magic card. The summoning time was 3 seconds. Tom Nixon believed that his bloodthirsty serpent would definitely be able to hold on for 3 seconds. At the same time, Dake began to summon Meow Meow without hesitation. However, while he was summoning, his gaze was still fixed on the field. The collision between the single scabbard and the bloodthirsty serpent happened in an instant. Facing the unstoppable steel sword, the bloodthirsty serpent was like a martial arts grandmaster. Its right hand stretched out like a snake, and it was as fast as lightning. Its arm circled around the attacking long sword several times at an unimaginable speed, and then it grabbed the hilt of the single scabbard. At this moment, the sword tip of the single scabbard was already at its chest, but it was forcefully pulled back. However, just when everyone thought that the bloodthirsty serpent had successfully seized the sword in such a strange way, a burst of holy light suddenly erupted from the single scabbard's body. The holy characteristic that could only be activated when an individual with the hero quality wielded the sword was activated automatically by the single scabbard itself. In just an instant, the bloodthirsty serpent that was illuminated by the holy light went limp. It was to the extent that its arm, which was coiled around the sword sheath like a snake, suddenly exploded into a bloody mist in an instant. Then, the single scabbard pierced the bloodthirsty serpent's chest. Clang! As the single scabbard made a sound, the bloodthirsty serpent, which only had 800 defense and low HP, was pierced through its chest, and its magic instantly dropped to 0 points. However, just as it was about to turn into a magic light spot, Tom Nixon had already successfully activated the second magic card. Return from the underworld, bloodthirsty serpent. Under the cover of the black light, the bloodthirsty serpent, that was originally a devil, turned into an undying species. Its slender snake eyes suddenly opened, and a blood-red light flashed as it let out a terrifying roar. Then, its body expanded rapidly under the cover of the black light. Its snake body, which was originally as thick as a bowl, became as thick as a bucket. The densely packed blood-red snake scales on its body were all exposed by the expanding body, and they looked unusually sparse. Its muscular left arm, which had also become muscular, suddenly grabbed the single scabbard's hilt and pulled it out of its body. As for the bloodthirsty serpent's right arm, it did not grow out. The bloodthirsty serpent's transformation, which had not happened in the previous matches, shocked the audience. Turning a dead life into a zombie was originally a method used by the infamous necromancers, and it was feared and hated by the people. However, in the war, the human necromancers were an important existence for the human army to fight against the necromancy magic of the demons, and many of them had obtained a lot of merits. Many necromancers who survived the war would bring the huge wealth that they had obtained with their merits and live in seclusion in remote territories that they had obtained with their merits. In those remote and ghastly castles, there might be old necromancers living in seclusion. Let's not talk about this for now. The curse card that Tom Nixon used to turn the bloodthirsty serpent into a zombie was known as a godly card in the Magic Fairy Duel. On the surface, it seemed to have even strengthened the bloodthirsty serpent to a certain extent. Dake did not expect him to have this method at all. After successfully summoning Meow Meow, its expression became serious and it gave the scabbard an order. Scabbard, sword dance. Of the scabbard's sure kill skills, combo slash, and sword dance, in the weapon form and the fairy form, had overlapping cooldowns and had extremely long cooldowns. This meant that after using sword dance, Scabbard could not use sword dance again in this duel. However, in the current situation, it had to be decisive. With a bloodthirsty serpent holding the sword hilt, the scabbard suddenly turned its blade upon receiving the order. Then, wisps of sword wind rose up, and a strong air current exploded, breaking the bloodthirsty serpent's left hand. After the scabbard broke free, it immediately rushed into the sky. Its ribbon grabbed the scabbard and kept dancing, and its momentum rose. What was shown was that the air current around the sword became more turbulent. This obvious method of strengthening made Tom Nixon's expression instantly turn serious. He immediately shouted, "Bloodthirsty serpent, bind! Bind!" It was a sure kill skill that was not in the bloodthirsty serpent sure kill skill column. However, the bloodthirsty serpent obviously understood. It relied on its skyrocketing height and its elongated left hand to jump into the air, trying to use its arm to grab the scabbard. When the scabbard swung out its slash, it would bind it like before. This was an excellent countermeasure for a sword that needed acceleration to explode with power. However, the scabbard was not a sword without a consciousness. It instantly moved the blade and rose again, and then the sword dance became even more intense. 8000/8000, it's 12 o'clock again. Chapter 398. It was just a moment of attack and defense. The bloodthirsty Ophidian's entanglement failed. After the scabbard pulled out the sword, the increasingly fierce sword dance set off a violent airflow, blowing the bloodthirsty Ophidian away on the spot. After that, the scabbard's aura became even stronger, and the enhancement of the sword dance reached its peak. Tick! The sound of the turn switching was heard. Dake suddenly ordered, "Scabbard, kill it!" Clang! The scabbard shook the sword body violently and let out a long cry. When the spectators heard the sword cry that soared into the sky, they only felt that the aura in their body was driven, and their whole body was burning. And in that boiling battle intent, the scabbard suddenly accelerated from top to bottom. Remember in 1 second. https://m. Vipkanchu. VIP, bloodthirsty Ophidian, dodge. Tom Nixon saw that something was wrong and suddenly shouted. But under the powerful slash of the scabbard, how could the bloodthirsty Ophidian, which was at most strengthened to 4-star, dodge? At that moment, a white lightning bolt struck down, leaving a sharp afterimage in the air. The bloodthirsty Ophidian had just made a pose when it was cut in half from head to toe by the white light. Boom! Magic power exploded. The bloodthirsty Ophidian's body exploded the moment it was cut in half, completely turning into magic light spots. This fiend that could rely on bloodthirsty to absorb the opponent's life and inject mad blood snake venom into itself to continuously strengthen itself left the field before it could absorb even a drop of blood. And this time, there was no spell card that could revive it. Tom Nixon's fingers trembled slightly. He did not expect to suffer such a heavy blow in the first round. He did not draw a card. When the bloodthirsty Ophidian confirmed that it was hopeless, he had already begun to cast the usual summoning spell, urgently summoning the second magic elf. After the scabbard killed the bloodthirsty Ophidian, its aura weakened slightly, and the violent airflow around the sword body dissipated. But without the enhancement of sword dance, it was still a 4-star magic elf with an attack power of 2,200. Therefore, it only paused for a moment before it retreated slightly again, accumulating power for a stab. Its target was the blue square magic ball. The blue magic conducting ball was right in front of him, and he was completely defenseless. There was no way he could dodge this attack. Tom Nixon, who was summoning urgently, could only watch as the single scabbard stabbed into the blue magic sphere's life enchantment, and its magic power plummeted. Magic, blue 8,000, 5,900. But when he pulled out his sword from the scabbard and wanted to strike again, Tom Nixon had already freed his hand. With a point of his finger, the blue magic ball shot up into the sky. Then, a white light descended, and a mud-like magic guide elf appeared from the summoning light. The magic elf that appeared in the air gave off a strong stench of decay. Beneath the folds of its mud-like body, there were horrifying eyeballs that rolled around from time to time. Just as the scabbard was about to accelerate and dodge, it was hugged by it, as if it had fallen into a swamp. Card name, Rotten Slime. Type, Elf card. Level, *****. Race, Undying. Attribute, Ghost/Poison magic power, 1200 attack, 800 defense, 1600 ultimate skills, Corpse Decay Curse, Feigned Death. After the scabbard was wrapped by the rotten slime, the light on the sword body disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye, leaving only the sword hilt struggling outside. Dake, who knew nothing about this rotten slime, frowned. He called out tentatively, "Single scabbard?" The single scabbard that was immersed in the mud trembled all over, and suddenly burst out with light, forcibly breaking through the resistance that wrapped around its body, and pulled itself out of the rotten slime's body. But the rotten slime, whose body was cut open, pounced on it again as if it was not afraid of death. Before the single scabbard could fly, it was wrapped up by the rotten slime again. The single scabbard was instantly enraged, and the sword body shone brightly. After breaking through the encirclement of the rotten slime for the second time, it brandished the sword and chopped it into pieces. But the rotten slime that was chopped into pieces did not turn into light and disappear. Tom Nixon, who was on the blue platform, showed obvious joy. He no longer watched the fierce battle, but reached out to the deck and took out 2 magic cards in a row. On the other side, Dake had also taken out 2 magic cards for the second round. He took a look through the gap and suddenly felt slightly relieved. Kettle Kettle. Push Incantation. Among the 2 new magic cards, Push Incantation's application level was lower, but it was not completely useless. The appearance of Kettle Kettle was a pleasant surprise. He immediately began to summon Kettle Kettle. While silently chanting the incantation, he did not look away from the field. Meow Meow, which had been summoned in the first round, had crossed half of the field and entered the blue area. After the single scabbard chopped the rotten slime that looked like rotten slime into pieces, it suddenly flickered. Dake was preparing to command the single scabbard to chase after the blue magic ball, but at this moment, he could not help but frown. The single scabbard's magic value did not significantly decrease, but it seemed that there was something wrong with its condition. Just as he was hesitating, the pieces of the rotten slime that were chopped up by the single scabbard gathered together as if they had a consciousness. It was resurrected. Again. Dake was shocked, but the summoning did not stop. Kettle Kettle's magic card had already lit up, and the summoning light shot from the card's surface fell into the red summoning area. The magic fairy with a red hard shell that looked like a tortoise but was actually a worm appeared in the light. Almost at the same time, the resurrected rotten slime in the blue summoning area once again pounced on the single scabbard. With the single scabbard's speed, even if it did not accelerate, it could easily dodge this level of attack. But unexpectedly, it did not move at all, and it was immediately pounced on by the rotten slime from the air to the ground. Duong! The sound of the sword falling to the ground was unusually crisp. Dake suddenly woke up and shouted, "Meow meow! Meow!" Meow Meow immediately responded, exerting strength on its 4 limbs and suddenly accelerating. At this moment, Tom Nixon on the blue contestant's platform had already revealed a cold smile. He picked out another magic card from his hand and then sneered, "When you summon the core magic fairy, you must be mentally prepared to be targeted. This sword of yours has already been destroyed." His voice spread through the entire stadium through the loudspeaker, causing a flurry of discussion. Those who had some understanding of the single scabbard's divine nature all frowned. "It seems to be a death-type curse," eldest Prince Charles said to himself. His confidant was puzzled. Even so, the curse of a 3-star magic fairy can suppress a holy sword? Eldest Prince Charles smirked. "In fact, it has already been suppressed." "How can this be?" the eldest princess questioned. But Claire did not care at all and said, "A holy sword is only a true holy sword in the hands of a brave person, just like a brave person with a holy sword is a true brave person. Since ancient times, there have been many holy swords with a high degree of self-awareness, but have you ever heard of a holy sword saving the world?" The eldest princess nodded subconsciously and then looked to her side. The Duke was tightly holding the white cat model and repeatedly making small slashing motions in front of him. The corners of her eyes suddenly turned black, and she did not want to look at him anymore. And in the arena, on the red team's platform, after a brief moment of shock, Dake had some guesses about the sure kill skill of the rotten slime. The rebirth of this slime is different from the zombification of the bloodthirsty serpent man. It should be its own specialty. Then, is it the same feign death skill as Saraswati's Mummy of the Dead? A magic fairy with the sure kill skill, feign death, has 2 lives in battle. Similar sure kill skills include the 9 lives cat demon or the 9 lives of the 9 tails fox, which have 9 lives, but this slime is clearly not one of them. And the single scabbard is very likely suffering from a debilitating curse. After sorting out his thoughts, Dake's gaze gradually sharpened. He saw that Meow Meow had already run to the blue team's summoning area and immediately shouted, "Meow Meow, draw your sword." Meow. Meow Meow did not hesitate to plunge its claws into the rotten slime's rotten body, not fearing those rotating eyeballs at all. If it was the goddess Ibu, she would definitely be very repulsed. Dake was glad that the magic fairy present was the evil type Meow Meow. When Meow Meow reached out to grab the single scabbard's hilt, he immediately injected magic into the single scabbard's magic card to activate weaponization. The single scabbard, which had lost its power due to the rotten corpse curse, barely completed its weaponization. The single eye in the middle of the hilt gradually closed as if it was about to fall into a long slumber. Then, the excited Meow Meow pulled the rotten slime's body with all its might. Meow. What goes around comes around. Today, it's my turn. With the holy sword in its hand, Meow Meow immediately felt a surge of power enter its arm. Dake used his magic to inspect Meow Meow's magic card and immediately found that its attack had increased by 900 points. It seems that even after being cursed, the single scabbard's attack buff is still there. This was, without a doubt, an unexpected piece of good news. However, Meow Meow wasn't a hero candidate with the hero quality. It couldn't activate the holy effect of the single scabbard, nor could it fully unleash the combo slash and sword dance effects. Under such circumstances, even trying to activate the holy effect to dispel the curse was difficult. But at this time, this was the only way. Meow Meow, send it on its way again. After receiving the order, Meow Meow immediately raised the holy sword and slashed at the rotten slime. Even if this slash couldn't kill it, it could at least heavily injure it. But if it succeeded, it could trigger the words of death again. Dake thought quickly and began to summon the rotten slime. With Kettle Pot, the rotten slime had a place to stay. As long as it was summoned on Kettle Pot's shell, it could immediately crawl into the shell. At that time, no matter which second-tier magic fairy was summoned, it could be used as a sacrifice. But Meow Meow's sword strike didn't hit its target. The rotten slime suddenly turned into light and shot up into the sky. Dake's eyebrows twitched. He immediately noticed that the magic card in Tom Nixon's hand was shining brightly. On the blue team's platform. Tom's mind had quickly calmed down. He raised the magic card and chanted loudly, "On the day of the resurrection of the dead, on the day of the resurrection of the dead, the two souls returning from the underworld play the Duet of Souls, ritual summoning." Card name, Duet of Souls. Type, Mystic Ritual Card. Effect, complete 2 rebirths in a very short interval in battle. With one of the reborn lives as a sacrifice, special summoning, soul funeral. It's the mystic ritual summoning again. Dake's mind spun. He suddenly recalled Senior Elsie Kevin's last summon during the duel. The so-called ritual summoning was to use the mystic ritual card to summon a special magic fairy. The prerequisite for this kind of summoning was to fulfill the requirements of the ritual. Some rituals had very harsh requirements, but the summoned magic fairy could be even more strange and powerful. And if the difficulty of the ritual was lower, the summoned magic fairy would usually not be too strong. Although Dake didn't know what Tom's mystic ritual card was, the difficulty of this ritual was obviously not low. Is this the top powerhouse of the third years? This thought suddenly jumped into Dake's mind. The system Tom Nixon used in this duel was obviously different from the one he used in the duel with Mary Bond. It made it impossible for people to understand his background. He just didn't know what star level the summoning ritual could summon this time. He soon had an answer to his question. A fleshless skeleton stretched out its pale bony claws from the summoning ritual. It seemed to crawl out of the abyss, supporting its body as it crawled out of the summoning ritual. Its skull was engraved with bloodstains. Its body was draped in a tattered black robe. The corners of the black robe dragged down, covering its feet that was suspended in the air. In its hand, a scythe exuding bright red blood made it look like a grim reaper. But it was not a grim reaper, but a life form that originated from the underworld, Soul Undertaker. With the appearance of the Soul Undertaker, an extremely cold aura suddenly erupted, and even Meow Meow, who was on the ground, shivered. Card name, Soul Undertaker. Type, Fairy Card. Level, Race, Undying. Attribute, Spectre/Dark. Magic Power, 2500. Attack, 2400. Defense, 1000. Killing Skills, Scythe of the Dead, Soul Undertaker. A 5-star Magic Fairy. A 5-star Magic Fairy was summoned in the second round. On the commentary platform, Zach Wilson tried to use a loud enough voice to break the chill. After successfully summoning the Soul Undertaker, Tom Nixon picked out another magic card. He deliberately turned the face of the magic card towards dark, and then turned it back to face dark. In front of the player's platform, the huge card displayed on the magic projection had completed its turn. Thus, Dark was able to clearly see the card's surface. His heart suddenly sank. Tom Nixon's display of the magic card was a very serious provocation, but that magic card really made him feel troubled. It was a secret ritual card, Double Whale of the Dead. Card name, Double Whale of the Dead. Type, secret ritual card. Effect, immediately after the death of the undying species, it will launch a counterattack against the killer. A typical Death Whisper series of secret ritual cards. The restricted target was the undying species that were thought to be dead. It would search for the death of the undying species and launch a counterattack. It was important to pay attention to the power of the counterattack, but since it was put into the deck by Tom, its power should not be weak. This was probably the same type of magic card as the Dream Demon's Same Fate. But generally speaking, this type of magic card should be used as a trap, otherwise it would be easy to avoid. Tom Nixon deliberately showed this magic card. Is it an arrogant demonstration? Or is there another purpose? While Dake was thinking for a short while, the Soul Undertaker and Meow Meow had already started their confrontation. A 5-star magic fairy and a 3-star magic fairy. But with the support of the single scabbard, Meow Meow's attack power increased to 2,400 points, which was the same level as the Soul Undertaker's attack power value. The Soul Undertaker's defense was only 1,000, which was not much different from Meow Meow's 900 defense. The two magic fairies with a 2-star difference were actually evenly matched in the initial confrontation. And the second round passed just like that. Tick. At the beginning of the third round, Dake was still confused. Tom Nixon had already quickly drawn his cards. From the slow reaction of Dake dimming to draw his cards, he knew that his psychological tactics must have been successful. Even if the strength of the magic card is not weak in the first year, he is extremely lacking in dueling experience. Just releasing a seemingly useful magic card can distract him and waste his mental energy for nothing. Tom Nixon glanced at the two new magic cards in his hand and immediately picked out a magic fairy card to summon. Immediately after, a brand new magic fairy appeared in his blue summoning area. It was a blood-red lion with bat wings on its back and a single horn on its head. Card name, Blood-Winged Lion King. Type, Fairy card. Level, *****. Race, Bird Beast. Attribute, Evil. Magic power, 1,300. Attack, 1,500. Defense, 1,400. Ultimate skill, Blood Rage. A 3-star blue card with only one ultimate skill. It was similar to the standard 3-star of the Troll. But the Blood-Winged Lion King, with wings on its back, could fly into the sky and chase after the magic ball. This newly summoned Blood-Winged Lion King rushed to the red summoning area as soon as it appeared, ignoring Meow Meow, who was fighting with the Soul Undertaker. And in the red summoning area, there was only one magic fairy defending. However, the visibly slow speed of the magic elf had already been exposed in the previous matches. Tom was very clear that as long as the Blood-Winged Lion King bypassed it and did not pay any attention to it, even if it was hit by the ultimate skill, it would be far away and would not be attacked. And once Dake Dimming felt threatened, it would use its magic to remotely control the magic ball to fly into the sky. Then, the Blood-Winged Lion King would be able to chase it until it had no time to breathe, and it would determine the victory. It was a very clear path to victory, assuming Dake did not respond. On the red contestant's platform. Although it was a beat slower, Dake still drew two new magic cards. Curse Cage, Little Demon. Big Milk Can. The appearance of these two magic cards made Dake instantly calm down. The appearance of Curse Cage, Little Demon, meant that he could use the Bliss 3 that he had drawn at the beginning to summon the Hadaloo Beast that he had not drawn for a long time. After that, he only needed to draw the Hadaloo Beast and Fusion to have a chance to summon the ultimate trump card, the Basti Beast. The appearance of Big Milk Can meant that he could immediately sacrifice and summon the second-tier Steel Fortress, the Big Milk Can. Although Dake rarely used Big Milk Can in official duels, it was not noticed by others. However, even if Big Milk Can gave up on roll, which was difficult to use, it still had a super defensive ultimate skill that could last for a very long time: Round Shape. Once Round Shape was used, Big Milk Can's defense would increase from 2,000 to 3,000 points, and it could basically ignore the attacks of magic fairies below the 3rd tier. Even if the opponent used a powerful ultimate skill to reduce its HP, it could still stand tall with 2,000 points of mana and the ultimate skill, Drink Milk, that could recover half of its mana. Together with the Trickster Wizard Kettle, the red magic ball was basically safe. There are two things that you need to pay attention to in a magic duel: attack and defense. If your attack is blocked, then you need to build your defense first. Dake's eyes focused, and he immediately summoned Spell Cage, Little Demon Beast. Therefore, when the Blood-Winged Lion King crossed half of the field, Dake had already summoned the Little Demon Beast. After seeing the Little Demon Beast, Tom Nixon's mouth twitched, and he immediately changed his strategy. Blood-Winged Lion King, attack that little demon. Anyone who watched Dake's duel would have a deep impression of the Little Demon Beast's evolution. Since the Blood-Winged Lion King had crossed half of the field, perhaps it could be killed before it evolved. After the Blood-Winged Lion King received the new order, it immediately opened its blood-red bat wings, stepped in the air, and flew up. Blood Rage. Tom Nixon still felt that it wasn't enough, and he calmly gave the second order. The Blood-Winged Lion King immediately used its only ultimate skill, and drops of blood seeped out from under its skin, and a crazy aura burst out. Then, its flying speed suddenly skyrocketed. The spectators who could see the contestants' magic cards immediately noticed that the Blood-Winged Lion King's magic value was rapidly decreasing, and they immediately understood the ultimate skill, Blood Rage. This was an ultimate skill that consumed life force to strengthen itself. For this kind of suicide ultimate skill, the strengthening effect was usually higher than normal strengthening ultimate skills. The Blood-Winged Lion King's strengthening effect was very obvious. The little demon beast was just summoned, and it was still confused, and in the blink of an eye, it saw a bloody lion flying toward it. It subconsciously wanted to turn its head and ask for help. But it only received the overly serious gaze of its master. Woman's word. The little demon beast instantly understood that it could only rely on itself from now on. Therefore, it didn't hesitate to dive, and it flew down against the norm. Because below, it had its most reliable family member, Kettle. Save, 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 save. After shouting the word, save, countless times in its heart, the little demon beast flew near Kettle before the Blood-Winged Lion King bit its butt. Kettle was already prepared, and its eyes suddenly lit up with the light of its superpower. Ultimate skill. Equal defense. The little demon beast's defense value instantly increased from a pitiful 100 points to 1,150 points. Ultimate skill. Equal strength. The Blood-Winged Lion King's attack value instantly increased from 1,500 points to 750 points. Even with the support of Blood Rage, when it was about to bite the little demon beast's butt, it only scratched a layer of skin. Oh, greater than over equal to mouth. Oh, The little demon beast immediately accelerated again and escaped from the lion's mouth with a scream. The Blood-Winged Lion King, who seemed to have bitten into steel, was shocked by the moment its body softened and froze in the air for a moment. Then, a pink light shone down. The Blood-Winged Lion King, who was affected by the light, instantly turned red, and blood flowed, and the amount of blood loss increased greatly. While Tom Nixon was extremely shocked, the little demon beast was finally surrounded by the light of Bliss 3. The skull pattern on its forehead instantly turned into the Bliss emblem, and its entire body became a shining object surrounded by the pink light. Then, its life structure changed drastically. When the light dissipated and it descended from the air, it had already turned into a black cat, Heidi Road Beast. Card name, Heidi Road Beast. Type, Elf card, level. Race, Devil. Attribute, Dark. Magic power, 1,500. Attack, 1,900. Defense, 900. ultimate skill, cat fist, dangerous love. The Heidi Road beast, who landed on the ground, suddenly let out a roar that didn't match bliss. Then, it stomped its feet and jumped from the ground to the air, grabbed the blood-winged Lion King's wings, and then angrily flipped over. Its strong desire for revenge made it swing its deadly claws at the blood-winged Lion King. That bit it. Like the Heidi Road beast, the Heidi Road beast had indestructible claws. Although it didn't have the buff of the Holy Ring, its attack was still as high as 1,900, and it made the blood-winged Lion King pay a heavy price. Awoo! The blood-winged Lion King, which couldn't reach its back, howled in pain and was unable to turn back. It was actually scratched to death by the Heidi Road beast. The moment its corpse turned into light, Tom Nixon's face stiffened imperceptibly. Tick. Battle Stage 4. 30s. In the name of Tom Nixon, Magician Summoning. At the moment the turn changed, Tom Nixon completed another Magician Summon. This was actually a kind of skill. If he summoned it at this time, he could effectively interrupt the opponent's rhythm. Tom Nixon didn't do it on purpose. The blood-winged Lion King's death put him in a slightly awkward situation because he didn't have a first-tier Magician Elf card that could be used for normal summoning. If he still couldn't find a new first-tier Magician Elf card in this 4th round, it would be difficult for him to perform in the future. But at this moment, he didn't have time to care about this. After the Heidi Road beast killed the blood-winged Lion King, it immediately rushed to the blue area. Once it met up with Meow Meow, his Soul Undertaker would be at a disadvantage. He had to effectively kill Meow Meow before the Heidi Road beast arrived. So Tom Nixon activated the Magician Elf card that he originally kept, Mysterious Snake. In an instant, from the black light emitted from the Magician Elf card in his hand, a mysterious snake like a black fog swarmed out. It flew down from 5 meters in the air and bit Meow Meow, who was fiercely fighting with the Soul Undertaker. The two Magician Elves had already used their ultimate skills in the process of trembling. Meow Meow tried to use Thief to steal the scythe in the Soul Undertaker's hand, but it failed. The Soul Undertaker's scythe was actually a part of its body, so it couldn't be stolen. So Meow Meow's Thief only took the tattered black robe from its body, and now it was casually thrown on the ground. Without the robe, the Soul Undertaker's whole body was exposed to the eyes of the people inside and out. Under Tom Nixon's command, it used its ultimate skill, Scythe of the Dead, which gave the scythe in its hand the effect of spiritual shock. Once the Scythe of the Dead's scythe hit, the opponent would feel as if they had seen hell, their spirit would be shocked, and they would feel fear and despair. But Meow Meow's ultimate skill, Technique Master, gave it extra dexterity when using items, and even its swordsmanship was far better than the Soul Undertaker. From the beginning to the end, it wasn't hit even once. Although the scythe of the single sword suffered the corpse decay curse, it could still block the effect of Scythe of the Dead, so Meow Meow was safe and sound. But this time, the appearance of Mysterious Snake broke the balance. Dozens of mysterious snakes formed from black fog swarmed over, and Meow Meow was so frightened that it blocked the scythe with its sword and quickly retreated. But the mysterious snake was too fast, and one of them still bit its right shoulder, causing a patch of black to seep out of its right shoulder. Then, the nerve tissue nearby suddenly went out of control. Its right arm that held the sword trembled violently, and its 5 fingers couldn't exert any strength. The scythe of the single sword slipped from between its fingers. Meow Meow's expression changed drastically, but its reaction was also very fast. It immediately used its left hand to grab the sword and raised it, blocking the scythe that was coming down at it. If it was someone else, the strength of the left hand would definitely not be as strong as the dominant hand. But Meow Meow was not. Meow Meow, who could draw a square with its left hand and a circle with its right hand, was still using the holy sword, without fail. But the mysterious snake that fell to the ground didn't dissipate. Instead, it crawled over and madly bit at Meow Meow's feet. Meow Meow Meow. Meow Meow stomped its feet and tried to escape, but after being entangled by the Soul Undertaker, one of its toes was still bitten. Meow Meow's face turned pale, knowing its fate. The opportunity to shine was about to slip through its fingers. 8000/8000 meow 1000 meows. Tomorrow 8+4. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.